Before we do that, we have a report from the planning board clerk. Kate, do you have a report today?
Yes, Madam Chair, since the 1/12/23 meeting, there have been 10 public comments received, written public comments on cases on our agenda this evening. There have been 11 public comments on 399 Union, 12 public comments on 10 to 60 Main Street, and 2 public comments on 4 to 49 Homer.
Great, thank you. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that tonight?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, right, great. That said, we will be opening our first public hearing, or continuing our first public hearing, which is the 399 Union Street site plan review, continued from the January 12th, 2023 meeting. Peter, is there anything we need to go over before we jump into any new drawings that are going to be shown this evening to the board?
Yeah, I can just jump in and state that, you know, since our last meeting on the 12th, the applicant has provided some new documents. Number one, comments that were collected by the from the planning board were shared with the applicant. But also since then, the applicant has submitted some revised renderings of the east elevation of the building. And those would include some new details, which I'm going to obviously pass the baton off to them, and they can kind of explain a little bit deeper. That would include the development and implementation of a proposed mural on the east elevation, which will be the side facing Union Street. In addition, we have gotten comments which were shared to the applicant's attorney, Mr. Jerry Efron, regarding the traffic. That letter was done by Ron Mueller. I worked this week to kind of wrap those items up as requested. And then other items that were shared and collected were email regarding from the Ashland Fire Department, which was a quick review of the proposed bollards and the access to the site. That email was obviously spread around to the planning board. The applicant also did supply us with a updated supplementary memorandum. And there was a revised site plan that came through from the applicant's engineer, and that had a couple of changes to the site, in particular to the fence and the fencing that came up into last planning board's discussion. So I think I hit all the main notes, and I think it's at this point we should hand it over to the applicant, and they can run through any and all new material they feel like they want to present to the board.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it's, I just wanted to keep it to any new material or anything that was in question from our previous meeting. So who is taking?
Thank you. Jerry Efron, attorney for the applicant. Peter's summary was extremely accurate, and I'll be deferring very quickly to my technical people for the details. We did file a new site plan dated January 18th. The site plan changes and adds to fencing and significantly adds to landscaping in several areas. In addition, there's a plan that I would direct you to that I know Mr. Rodgers will discuss. It's entitled a CR plan. It's a colorized landscape rendering that details both the existing landscaping, which will remain, and the landscaping which will be added. In addition, Mr. Betancourt, who's with us tonight, our architect, did supply several renderings. The renderings dealt specifically with comments made by several board members. On the side of the property that fronts Union Street shows a pallet which no longer has on it the ladder, which has been relocated, so it is no longer in public view. And as Peter indicated, we came up with the idea as a community outreach. That's something I think would hopefully excite the board, of allowing our side to be used as a palette, a canvas, frankly, for a mural to be painted by an artist, hopefully chosen by the town as a community outreach and connection to paint a mural. We're offering the surface. We're happy to leave it plain, which we think frankly is still okay. But this is, in my opinion, a unique opportunity to involve others in the process for doing something which I think we all collectively agree is in a gateway location to the town of Ashland. We did receive only today the supplemental report from Ron Mueller Associates, which Peter forwarded this morning. He made several specific recommendations. I'm happy to inform the board that we agree to all of them and have implement or will implement them into the design and any conditions of approval should the board decide to go into that direction. I did file a supplemental memorandum in this case. I felt I had to do so, frankly, to address what I believe to be the appropriate standard for site plan review criteria and to take the time to lay out why the specific criteria in the bylaw have been satisfied, in my opinion, by that which is before you. We have received public comments. They were significantly supportive, most of them, not all. One of the more important letters, I believe, was from the Office of Economic Development. It stressed things that we haven't paid a lot of attention to in this process, which was some of the economic benefits of the project if it is approved, in terms of additional employees, additional tax revenues, and not much strain on infrastructure. Again, we think we've come a long way. We're always going to be in situations, not just on this application, but on every application, we're never going to be able, no one is going to be able to accommodate every single recommendation made by any individual member or citizen of the town. But we try to show you not just what we've done, but how far we have come. With that, I would ask most respectfully to turn it over to Scott Rogers to give some detail to the new engineering changes that are in the most revised site plan.
That's fine. And just while we're getting maybe that the screen, the appropriate page to come up, I did want to make a comment on the memorandum that was sent for the information of the board, that though it is true that the board, of course, always reviews the criteria in 9.4.6 in regard to site plan review. This is also site plan review and design plan review as per 9.4.2.1, purpose of design plan review. And those bylaws also, as part of that, part of our purview is also to pay attention to 9.4.7, which is building design, and 9.4.11, which is about buildings. So it's important to note that looking at this building as a part of design, site plan review and design plan review, which this falls under, absolutely comes under the purview of the planning board, according to my reading of those bylaws. So we appreciate your comments, but we need to go forward, obviously, with our duties as a whole and not pulling out only the criteria out of 9.4 site plan review. So with that said, I'm happy to turn it over to, I believe you said Scott Rogers, to
Please.
To look at the site plan.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, planning board members. For the record, my name is Scott Rogers from JK Holmgren Engineering. I believe I have the landscape plan shared on the screen. And
Yes.
As was kind of highlighted by Peter Matchak, so we did add a continuation of the existing fence, which is on the eastern side of the property. I'm going to call it the rear of the proposed building. You can see it where my cursor is. That basically extends from the little triangle piece there and goes all the way down towards Summer Street, and then takes a 90 degrees and goes 52 feet down Summer Street. So this will help to provide additional screening for the abutter on 88 Summer Street. Currently, there is a wooded area there, but the fencing does fall short of continuing. So we're going to extend that fence along that side and then turn it along Summer Street. In addition to that, we've added some screen plantings on the other side of the fence, which will help to soften the fence as well as provide some green space in that area as well. We've also taken the liberty to add some additional rhododendrons in that little triangular shape over by 88 Summer Street. This will also help to provide some additional screen plantings and some flowering shrubs in that particular area. In addition to that, we have added a couple of additional shade trees to the parking area. One would be on the corner in that area. I was just describing to you where that fence is being added to, and also an additional red maple, which is a native plant species, by the way, in the area by the Summer Street entrance where my cursor is, and also at the top of the apex, which we refer to often. We've also added some additional shrub plantings around the transformer area, which is on the southern side of the building, which sort of faces Union Street there. And I do also want to show you within the plan set the rendering for the landscape and that we revised. So those show the new planting areas, the new things we've added to the plan set since our last meeting of January 12th. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Keith Betancourt, who's going to discuss more about the architectural plan changes that we have made.
All right, thank you, Scott. For the record, Keith Betancourt with BKA Architects. We're the architect of record for the project. Scott, if you could, go to the elevations, that would be great. So based on a few of the comments that we received, looking for additional design elements and something a little more aesthetically pleasing on the east facade of the building facing Union Street, to take the most prominent wood. Scott, if you could scoot. Yep, right there, that'd be great. So that top east elevation, we're going to run on that upper half all of that wood material. We have, as previously mentioned by Mr. Efren, the ladder has been moved to the back side of the building, so it's no longer on this facade. We try to remove anything from here that was extraneous and back of house feeling, kind of utility feeling, and give this more of a facade feel. If you could, Scott, if you could jump to the rendering. The other thing that was mentioned was the mural. We did a quick rendering of what that could possibly look like. The image that you'll see on the bottom is kind of an homage to the start of the Boston Marathon. Again, as was mentioned, we're thinking this could be some type of a community outreach. It really has no specific design to it, but this is somewhat what it could look like. And as you can see, the wood running across the top, it's very simple and clean. And
Okay.
that's about it for the changes.
Okay, can I ask, I think this was mentioned by Mr. Efren about there were a few things you said that were in a current document. I think you meant the GCG follow-up and report where they mentioned 3 items and you had agreed to accept all of them. Am I looking at the right document?
No, Madam Chairperson, it was in the Mueller report that was dated yesterday or today, and we got this morning that requested that we put signalization on the pedestrian crosswalk from Stone Park, and that we only use certain box trucks, and that we maintain the height of the shrubbery on the side on Union Street to maintain the sight line, and all of those are agreeable. We'd actually incorporated in proposed findings already the sizing of the trucks and the landscaping, and the signalization requirement is acceptable.
That's fine. I thought that was coming from GCG, but that was coming from Mueller?
That's correct.
Right? Okay, yep, that's fine. My mistake. Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to have that out there for the board, that was clear. I'll now open it up for questions from the board. Marcelo?
Thank you, Tricia. So throughout the process, the way I feel at this point, we made several requests for the site, for adjustments to the site, and I think they were done properly, and I feel the site plan that really connects with the surrounding features and park and the pedestrian flow in a way that I had envisioned. In terms of the building, I appreciate the effort to connect it with the town. I think the idea for a mural of the marathon is a good one. I'm not sure if it would end up being like it's shown here, but I think it's a good idea, and that's something that the town can definitely assess and how to use it. And the adjustment of this elevation, which we asked, was done in a way that I think is satisfactory. So overall, I think I am pleased to see the changes, to see the reaction and the adjustment that the proponent has made to the building. And I think on my side, I have really nothing else that concerns me. So that having been said, I'm ready to vote on this application.
Okay. Thanks, Marcelo. I'm going to give the rest of the board a chance to make sure their concerns are addressed, but thank you for your input. So I'm opening up to the rest of the board.
I'd like to, so I have one, Attorney Efron mentioned from the economic development group and economic development personnel that there was like increase. Well, one of the things was an increased sales tax. And when I started looking at that at $20,000 a year, we have a 0.75% rate. So that would be like a $2.6 million revenue of that business. Is that in keeping with what the applicant and Attorney Efron were thinking of that dollar value?
Okay, in all fairness, that's not a letter that I wrote. It's a letter that I read. And for me to tell you the basis upon which the authors made that conclusion would be a leap that I cannot in good faith make.
And I
so I just don't know. I can't answer your question responsibly.
Okay, well, and since you referenced it, and I think that, so my concern about that is at a $2.6 million revenue, this is a very, 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 very busy site, and we have to get it right on safety. And I have, I think I'm happy to see that Ron Mueller, I asked to get that updated if he was in agreement. So we received that and he was not, with the dismissing the need for that stop. But what I did ask to have look at, we have 3 curb cuts, which are existing, but this is in no way a business that will be anything like the current business that has been there, the use of this property. And we know the children, high probability children from the middle school coming here, coming by here, and residents walking. And my request to Ron Mueller, well, through the planning department was, is there anything that we can do to make those cuts safer? And I'm thinking, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I'm thinking of the flavor of, right now they're pavement, and a car, that means car space. So if you, let's say, have a continuation of the sidewalk in some material and painting, the car has to say, oh, this isn't just my space. We did not get, I don't actually even know if it was asked, but if it was, we didn't get an answer timely. But I think we have to absolutely think about safety here, which I know the board has, but I'm not sure we're there yet. And then I think maybe extend into a conversation about the patio as well. I think the bollards sort of go over there, but I know we spent a lot of time with Mozzie and TJ's about protection of patrons outside at a patio, particularly where you could drive there. So those are on safety, probably my biggest things. And I mean, just sort of along the lines of Trish, because I want to support, you know, the board and the board carefully reviewing and being respectful, that in 9.4.11.2, a consistent visual identity shall be applied to all sides of buildings visible to the general public. So I think the applicants made some strides there, but offering to allow a blank building for a mural may not meet that. And just going to take a quick look at my notes. Oh, yeah, lastly, so I think these two are related. And an abutter asked for an 8-foot fence. I see a 6-foot fence got added. Related to that, the chair had asked for written agreements made with abutters. So I don't think I've seen anything, which may mean there weren't agreements made, but the last meeting I think seemed to indicate that there were. So I'd like to follow up on that as well. And that's it for now.
Can the applicant respond to those items? I think in particular, because there was a request to hear from the abutters, and we haven't heard from that, and that was because someone had said that the abutters were in agreement that everything was going well, but we don't have that in writing. We haven't heard from the abutters directly.
Brett, do you want to speak to that?
I can just note that if Peter Matchett, town planner, I just can note that we did receive a written correspondence with one of the one abutter that has been in communication with the planning office, the Romalos. That letter was filed in paper, and it was scanned and it was sent out to the planning board and the applicant. That's the only letter and communication I've had with an abutter. And I know of no written agreements with any abutter that do exist.
Was there a letter, or where did the communication come from requesting the 8-foot fence?
Originally, that came from the abutter, the Romalos.
The same abutter?
Yep.
Yeah, I think, so I'm looking to hear, I guess, from the rest of the planning board for any comments on those considerations. I'll save my comments to the end. And any additional comments from the planning board?
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in, Tricia. So a couple of things. One is I have to say I got very enthusiastic when I saw this rendering relative to the mural. I think that's the kind of creative community spirit, if you will, that is refreshing to see in a project. And so I wanted to compliment the applicant on that visual. I do think Kate's point is a good one, that the language of the bylaw talks about a certain visual that's consistent on all sides, visible to the public. And I think we as a board need to figure out, where we're given this kind of artistic empty space, how we're actually going to make sure that we deliver this image to the public. I don't want to run into a situation where we end up with a blank visual when it's built. I think we need to figure out as a board the logistics of actually making this happen. Right now, we don't have, we haven't discussed funding. We haven't talked about how this is actually going to occur. And although I appreciate the creative thinking from the applicant, it is an empty wall that we as a community need to figure out as part of this project so that we can deliver this image to the public. So that's kind of thought one. Thought two is I very much appreciate the vigorous public comment we received. I do think it's consistent with our meetings so far that we are, I reviewed my notes, I reviewed some of our meetings. Not once did we say that we have any interest in rejecting this plan. This is truly an as-right project. And just like Jerry Effron identified in his memo, we have jurisdiction to set reasonable restrictions per bylaw. But the bylaws do authorize us to do that, to set reasonable restrictions. We absolutely have authority to do it. And I did sense some panic in some of those public comments that somehow we're threatening the project as a board, or that somehow the applicant might walk away on a project that I thought we were pretty clear last time. The lease has been signed and negotiated. So I want to kind of share a thought and a concern that a sense of panic was created, which was not reasonable to where the board is at. And I think it questioned or lowered our independence as a planning board. And I have some concerns about that. So that's also a comment I wanted to make. And the last thing I'll say is, although this is a project where we have limited discretion to deny, there is jurisdiction that gives us quite a lot of discretion, including denial, if we feel that there is a safety violation. Now, we're not there. I think the applicant has done an excellent job addressing safety so far. However, I absolutely think that we should go along with the Mueller report, and we should request those flashing lights, the RRFB for the crosswalk. We should follow those 3 items very, very specifically and make sure pedestrians are safe. And we absolutely should establish the safety protocols that we've established at other outdoor facilities like TJ's or Motzi. I recall prior renderings had some outdoor seating space on the other side relative to Stone Park. And I think we as a board have an obligation to be consistent. This is no different from those other projects, and we should outline what those limitations and safety elements are. And obviously make sure we have the bike racks and other elements that we are prioritizing relative to pedestrian access and safety. And those would be my points.
Great, thank you. Kevin, are you wanting to chime in here? I don't see you on my screen. But...
Yeah, sure. I can
There you are.
quickly. I also appreciate this image that we're looking at here, that, you know, just completing that side of the building, and the idea of the mural is great. You know, I think in my head, I had been maybe hopeful that we'd like change the siding or something to make it not look like every other Starbucks, but this is at least something to not look like every other Starbucks, the newer ones that pop up. And, you know, with the glass on the other side, I mean, it is a nice looking building. And it will fit here. It's smaller than what's there. It's not an eyesore. And the other thing, I guess, was that my first thoughts when we started looking at this was the traffic, and particularly the Union Street curb cuts. I kind of just relooked at the plan again for tonight's meeting, and I think that's a lot better now, where their exit only is onto Union Street. It's less of a concern for me for pedestrians there, where they're really only having to deal with cars who are traveling at parking lot speed and going through a stop sign leaving. It's not somebody cutting across traffic, live traffic on Union Street, that may not see the pedestrian walking down the street. And then the offer there to go along with the traffic report and add the RRFB, I think that fits well there on Summer Street, just particularly because people, you know, Union Street onto Summer Street is kind of a weird, frustrating intersection at times. And I know I at least tend to accelerate a bit when I make that right onto Summer, so that as you come around the corner there, it'll be good to have the flashing lights. As Starbucks, I'm sure, will hope to have some pedestrian traffic coming from the kid spot in the fields over there. So I think all that stuff is looking good, and overall is an improvement greatly to what's there, and an improvement from what we first saw. So looking pretty good to me.
Okay. Great, thank you. I think for my part, anyone who knows me tends to know that I typically defer to expertise. And so I'm looking at the comments by Ron Mueller, who I believe is one from the beginning, the Ashland's traffic engineering consultant, who looked at this plan even before it came to the planning board to address issues of safety. Isn't that right, Peter?
That's correct.
And it went through several iterations before we even saw it, right?
Mhm.
So in terms of the safety of the site, granted, it's downtown Ashland, it's a busy intersection, but I defer to that expertise, that will be, you know, a working corner in that way. As far as the you know, and in actually, and in addition to that, I do feel like that down the road, because I believe one of the abutter suggested speed bumps, you know, down that road. I'm not sure that's something that the planning board can or would dictate at this time, if it's even in our purview to do so, but I could see that down the road, if indeed traffic becomes a problem, different than it is now, that the town of Ashland, I assume, obviously would take measures to do something about that. I think the one thing that may be easy to do is which I assume is what Kate was looking at, was painting on the road that at that location of that lights, painting a crosswalk to kind of give a double indication that something different is happening there. That seems like a simple thing to do. I don't know if that's DPW or part of this project. In addition, I am also wondering about the fence in back. There was a note to continue the, I believe they call it a stockade fence. The existing fence behind that building is in not great shape and maybe okay physically, but is quite an eyesore. And I would be asking of the applicants that at least in installing that new fence, you do something about the existing fence to have it be all uniform, because we will be seeing that fence with this smaller building much more than we do now. And it's pretty visible now, that wood fence. So I will ask the applicant to give that some thought while we have further comment. I believe there are bike racks at this site already. Is that not true? There are bike racks included in the site. Is that true?
Yes, there are bike racks proposed.
Yeah. Okay. I couldn't remember where they are, but I remember talking about them in the past. So, yeah, so those were my comments. Again, I also appreciate this idea about the facade, and I appreciate Anna's comment about wondering how this, how do we make sure this easily can go forward and happen? Maybe there's a small donation that can be made for the artist to encourage the town to allow that to happen. Is there flexibility for that rendering to go around the corner? Should the art ask for that, or could they propose that and the owner evaluate that at the time? These are all small considerations that I think actually can be worked out one by one. With that, I do want to open it up to some public comment.
Tricia, could I add one thing that I forgot to mention?
Yep, you can do.
I wanted to mention the open hours. Some of the public comment try to distinguish, or make this site just like other sites and compare this, for example, to the Dunkin' Donuts closer to the train station, et cetera. I think this is a different kind of site. I do think it has unique noise considerations because it's very close to a very quiet green space, which is Stone Park. So I do want at some point to talk about a reasonable restriction on hours so that we're thoughtful about a very, very busy Starbucks, which is what we want, right? We want this to be a successful business. So I want to talk about that reasonable restriction at some point. And I'll add that I believe at the last meeting we had, the town manager mentioned our business incentive programs as a town. There is a sign and facade improvement program that includes painting exteriors, where the applicant could in theory be asked to apply for matching funds from our community. And so I definitely want to explore the applicant's willingness to make a small contribution in light of what we anticipate to be a very successful Starbucks. And I think that's a reasonable request. We cannot necessarily require it, but I'd like to request it politely and see if we can find a way to partner here and figure this out.
Okay, great, well said. With that note, I will take public comment. Please be aware that the planning board has another extremely long agenda in making comments, but I do want to open it up for public comment tonight. Peter, can you
Yes.
control that?
So the one person with their hand up right now is Mr. Mark Dissoni. Mr. Mark Dissoni, please unmute yourself and carry on with your comments.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Mark Sony, 49 Hawthorne Road. And I'm looking at this rendered or picture that's in front now. Is this gonna be close to what's gonna be there? Is this exact, almost exact what the shape is gonna be as a building?
I believe it's kind of a box, as many Starbucks are.
Okay, so, and for the architect, through the chair, through the architect, I'm looking at the greenery on the sidewalk. Is that proposed, is this on the special, not the small on the left, but on the right, this, the green, medium-sized, tall ones here, are those gonna be proposed to be put there?
I think, Mark, that then I can let the architect respond, but I believe this is meant as a quick rendering to kind of show the idea of the painting and not meant to be an accurate rendering necessarily of the landscape. Is that true, Mr. Betancourt?
Yes, that is true. There is a proposal for some small shrubberies there, but they may not look exactly like that. It's an artistic rendering.
Okay. I want to ask it, thank you. I want to ask it saying, if it came out to be a final okay, can I make a suggestion? If it's reasonable to do,
Sure.
I would suggest that the green, light green, could be put on the other side of the sidewalk where the tree is, and have a like a green follow through for that. So when people are coming out, is this sidewalk or going off the Union Street?
This is Union Street, and I believe some of those higher shrubs are hiding some mechanical equipment back there.
Okay, cool.
That
And
is correct.
this will be exit coming out.
The Mark,
Yes.
that's a transformer behind that shrubbery.
Okay.
And this is the drive-through lane, not Union Street.
Oh,
So Union Street is not visible here. The
Oh.
sidewalk on Union, you cannot see.
okay. So, okay, then, like, I'll take back what you just made. They're going the other side, but it's not the Union Street coming out. Okay. And this would be the front, right?
It's kind of the side.
Yep.
Depending on what you consider the front.
Well, the three windows, ground floor, and the green shaded windows, that's all front, right?
Yeah, where you see the windows over there, that's where you actually go in.
Okay. So I would say the parking lot. Yeah, okay, I'll quit on that part, but I'm gonna ask about the parking lot. Is the parking lot gonna be reshaped to accommodate safer traffic flow?
Yes,
That's
this has been true from the beginning, Mark. So do you have any other comments? That has been, the parking was redone before the planning board even saw the project to accommodate issues of safety.
Then, no, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no other comments from the public.
Trish, I have a follow-up question for the applicant. Do we have an interior photos or renderings or anything? Renderings?
No, we do not at this time.
Is that something that can be made available to us?
No, let me jump in here, please.
No, I
This-
think I will jump in on
It's
there on
you.
this one.
Yes,
That really the interior is beyond the jurisdiction of the planning board. So that what the interior is, we're interested in obviously looking at how it is from the outside, how it appears to the public. But I believe the interior of the project it really is out of our purview. So, Joan, I will allow 2 minutes of public comment, but I will accept no other hands after that, as I did close public comment or ask for the public comment earlier. So you can unmute.
Sorry, Tricia, I had an interruption here that I missed it. So I have a question about the exterior. I didn't hear part of the meeting, as I said, because I had an important interruption. Is there going to be any changes to the exterior that I sent to the board a few pictures that I found that made it somewhat more, to me, Ashland-like, with the windows like they are maybe, but with detail above them that's a little more, I don't want to say colonial because that's not really the right word, but just more detail that kind of breaks up the building. And maybe does it need to be as box-like as it is, or could the roof angle back some above that detail? Those and some lighting that looks more like kind of like the bagel table lighting out front.
I would say from my point of view that these elevations have been in front of both boards for several months,
Okay.
at least. And though obviously there's always going to be, even when we go through the comprehensive plan process, there are going to be continuing various points of view about preferences for different architectural styles. So at this point, and any of the planning board can jump in to disagree, I am only one voice, but at this point, I think we are beyond that question.
It's too bad. Well, I can't say, I know you've done tons of work to make a better plan, and I appreciate that very much. And I think it is a much better plan than it started out to be. So I do really appreciate that. I do. I'm on the Historic Commission. I'm speaking as a person, an individual. So I kind of tend more to a more less modern facade. So those are my comments.
Understood, and I appreciate your participation. I really do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You take care.
Thank you. All right. At this point, what I would propose is that we take, and I'm not making a motion here, I'm making a proposal for input by the board. That, and maybe there's a few things we actually need to have answers on, but they seem to be small things. I would say those things are a possibility of offering the paint on at the crosswalk as recommended by Kate. I would say that is dealing with that really ugly fence in back, which will be more visible because of the smaller building, though I'm thankful for the smaller building. And it may be some consideration for supporting the painting, the mural, as per Anna's comment. Those are small things hanging out there. I would propose that we take, and Peter, you can advise that this is appropriate, take an informal vote on the acceptability of this process, assuming that the applicant would be willing to work with us on those issues, and then have this where we can go through conditions at the next meeting and be able to wrap this up.
Just a note, yes.
Please, Peter, I'm just kind of throwing that
No,
out.
just a note. I think that would be appropriate to do, but I do want to make a note that we would, if that is the case and it would be acceptable to the applicant, as they know, we'd be looking for extension to at least to issue a final decision and/or action with the town clerk, which would be the day after our next meeting, just to make note of that. But I agree we're on the right track, and so I would let you continue on.
So that would mean needing the applicant to approve a continuance to our next meeting, during which we would look at and approve final conditions after our preliminary vote here.
Yes, and that would have to be acceptable to the applicant.
Tricia, there's a couple of important items that, to me at least, which are the hours of operation, the outdoor seating consistency with other outdoor seating establishments. So, and the Mueller report that we want to follow very strictly, the updated one from yesterday. So those
Yeah.
3 items to me should be front and center as well.
Yes, the applicant has agreed to those 3 items, and I know from talking to Peter that they are already a part of the draft conditions.
Yeah.
As far as the safety around the seating area, that was the other item I had wanted to mention in talking about safety. And again, in looking at expertise, and if that had been specifically mentioned and approved by our fire department, then that is okay with me. So that's where I am on that.
I would agree with that.
So I'm not going to overrule our police chief. So that's where I am. So I would say, can we take an informal vote on this project, and so that we know how to proceed? And that would just mean, let me know where you stand on the project as of now. Marcelo?
I would vote in support for this project tonight or the next time. I think what's being discussed seems reasonable for discussion. I think I would just, I mean, many comments have been made about, making this more Ashland-like. I think, at least from my view, this site and its surroundings is Ashland right now. And I think this is an opportunity for the entire town to start improving how Ashland looks like. And I think this project achieves that. So I would support it.
Thank you. Anna?
I think the concept of an informal vote seems a little bit unclear to me, the purpose of it. Are we sort of taking an informal? What I will say is this: I think there's a lot of good in this project. I'm still somewhat disappointed by, for example, my question about interior design was completely shot down, right? So
I'm afraid it's just out of our purview.
So jurisdiction or not, it's a little bit unusual for me for such a vibrant community partner supposedly to be completely unwilling to share how our community will experience this building. I was a little surprised by that. Jurisdiction or not, I think that's an important element of how we're going to enjoy this building. So what I will say is I'm disappointed, but I think there's a lot of strong benefits to this project. And from the very first meeting, we had a lot of excitement in making this an Ashland Starbucks. I think we're getting there. So I'm leaning towards a yes, but I have to say I'm troubled that there's a consistent lack of, how do I phrase it the right way? I feel like we're constantly, at least I feel like I'm constantly pushing this project to be more community oriented.
Kate?
I still have safety concerns, and I really would like to hear from the independent person. There's absolutely nothing else for pedestrian and bike, because I think going back, that was a ask of the very first day of when we saw it, and people commented, got it better from the traffic perspective. That came from, don't forget, from essentially the planning board through the independent. That didn't come from the applicant. So I feel like if I could get more assurance that there's absolutely nothing else for bike and pedestrians that we can do there, then there's nothing wrong with having a Starbucks there. It's not the excitement and how we started out this, that Jerry said we'll be showing off this to Ashland. No, we will. They won't know they're in Ashland, right? Except that it's the Boston Marathon. So I'm disappointed. And I can't see how it'd be hard to get some more input from our independent expert on the sidewalk pedestrian bike safety.
Peter, am I wrong? Isn't that what our traffic consultant would have been looking at in part? I mean, safety was a huge part of that, I thought.
In having many conversations with Ron Muller, who lives in the abutting town, who knows this intersection very well, I enforced that safety was our number one concern. And I think in conversations, and I'll put him speaking for him, I think he feels satisfied with the site. I think especially with the implementation of the beacons, the flashing beacons across Summer Street, which him and I talked extensively about, and to make sure that worked. That kind of goes back to some of the original conversations we had about safety and how to connect the site to Stone Park in a safe manner. And those kind of, we had that discussion. So I think, Kate, I agree with you off the bat. Safety was our number one issue. And that's why we have made the changes to the entrances, and to right now that the entrance, well, what was first proposed as an entrance off of Union Street, and that being now turned into an exit only. So I do feel that safety was the top priority, and I think we've done a very good job of prioritizing safety and to make sure this is a safe site for pedestrians,
So can I call Ron Mueller and just hear that from himself, that there's nothing else we can do to make the sidewalk safer? I will feel satisfied if I get that from in writing or hear it myself. Because what I'm concerned about is getting that volume, if anywhere near those projections from the economic advisor are correct. This is going to be an extremely busy site. And I don't know, I personally wasn't thinking of it to that, like this just full blown, very, very, very busy site. I think I want to make sure that we thought about that, and there's nothing else we can do knowing the middle school is there.
I am happy to introduce you via email, via phone call to Ron Mueller, and you to have that discussion.
I mean, I just wanted to respond to Kate's comment. I think that letter we got yesterday addresses my concerns. I don't know, Kate, if that addresses yours. I feel like if he was concerned about safety, that letter would be more direct on that. I feel like those requirements are there. I was satisfied with that. This is a project that I think we will be accepting as a board. I don't think this is going to be something we're going to deny. I think that I take this informal vote as really a discussion of reasonable restrictions. Are we going to be okay with the restrictions we've been discussing? And that's kind of where I'm at. I think that to deny this project would be, is not where I'm at. I just want this to have the kinds of restrictions that are justified, in my opinion, by the bylaw.
I think that's my point, Anna, is let's just get out the little nitty gritty things that are still bothering people. So, Kevin, I think you kind of stated your opinion before, but is there anything you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, I think I'm, pretty much okay. A couple of small things you pointed out, just double checking the fence in the back, and that the butters, that's what they were looking for. I know there's been some communication there, so it'd be nice to just have that solidified from them. And other than that, I mean, I think adding the things that Peter already did from what the Mueller report said, I don't see much else outstanding. And I think the patio thing was already somewhat addressed, where they had changed the size of the bollards at some point or something like that. So I think it's pretty well protected. And, we could always run through our little patio checklist and make sure, but I think that applied more to the temporary patios, and this will be permanent, and I'm sure similar to the ones Starbucks has everywhere.
Right, agreed. And just a note to add onto my comment to make sure it was clear. I'm not sure an 8-foot fence is necessary. That it's given the vegetative area that's between those properties, it doesn't seem necessary to me to have 8 versus 6.
I would agree with that. I think just to make sure that the dumpster is fully blocked, and just the condition of the existing fence.
Agreed.
When you said that, an image of it popped in my head that it is kind of not in the best shape, so maybe it needs a new panel here and there, a coat of paint or something.
Okay, so I think that's where the board's sitting. I think that's fairly clear. So Peter, go through this timeline like with me. So go through this timeline again with me. I guess the question is, will the applicant accept a continuance for 2 weeks in which the planning, I know the draft decision is written as a draft, and that can be sent out to the planning board. That can be something obviously we can review. Our typical thing is to be able to review the draft conditions, discuss it at the next meeting, and then take our formal vote at that meeting. Is that?
Well, so that would have to be accepted by the applicant, number one. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to stop my screen share. I think I was just trying to take that over. And so this question is related to the applicant. So number one, our time frame to make final action is expired, right? And so we would be asking it or to see if the applicant is okay to continue the public hearing and the date to take final action and to satisfy final action, which would be filing a decision with the town clerk. Now, I have a decision that I've been drafting, and I am happy to share that with the planning board, and I'm happy to share that with the applicant. And so for the next 2 weeks, coming up on February 9th, we can tighten up whatever loose ends they have, and we have as a board, and then we could come back on the 9th, and then we could vote it. And then theoretically, I would stamp that in with the town clerk's office on the 10th. That just needs to be agreed upon by the applicant. So myself to Mr. Efren and or Mr. Greg Salvador, do you have any comments on that? Or because if not, the board would need to make a vote tonight. And then we would have to make, we would have to vote tonight and then take action there for tomorrow.
First of all, on substantive issues, on those safety issues, I kind of remind the board that the small report that Euler just wrote is his third report. The other reports address all of the other issues and were in response to significant memorandums that were filed by our traffic engineers, during which all of the safety aspects were mentioned. So although this report only itemized 3 matters, all of which we agree to, that is not essentially the entirety of the Mueller report. It was our hope tonight, to be frank, that at a minimum, the board would close the public hearing and take a vote, and then we would hope to deal with conditions. My own opinion is that I think the matters that have to be clarified, if that's the correct word, can be clarified at the condition level. Peter knows that we also submitted, in the hope of getting to where we need to go, some draft conditions. We thought those draft conditions that certainly at least addressed the subject matter. I'm sure Peter redrafted those, as he should. I would very much think, based upon the comments that I heard tonight, that we can come to an understanding, and that the board, if it imposes the conditions that it thinks it would be imposing on an approval, they'd be appropriate, satisfactory for the town, and they'd be acceptable to the applicant. But at this particular point, it is very difficult to extend to a continuance, which leaves the public hearing process open and allows for comments from anyone and for proposed revisions to where we are today. And that's not something we're looking forward. So we would respectfully request that instead of taking a straw vote, which although we appreciate the tenor of it, that the board vote to close the public hearing. If the board votes to close the public hearing with an intent to proceed at the next meeting, then that to approve, if the votes are there with conditions, that would be satisfactory to the applicant.
I am not opposed to closing the public hearing. I believe everything we need to know would be coming at this point from outside sources, such as if Kate wants additional information from the traffic consultant, that would be information from them, and that I don't think we would have any further information that we need from the applicant at this time. The applicant is aware of the things that we have talked about that might make their way into our conditions. So if there's any great opposition there, that they should
I think that's fine. The only thing is the mural and the funding and the potential work with the town of Ashland. I would certainly want to give some wiggle room for some type of comment from the town if there is funds to make the mural happen. So presumably that can come through Peter at the next hearing.
Anna, I think I get where you're going to, but I think I disagree with the approach. I think that the way I understand it, the applicant is proposing to let that wall be a canvas for a piece of art. I think to make it thoughtful, and I guess your comment on potential participation of the applicant, that's all fine to me. But I think this is a process that wants to be a little more careful. I don't think this should be tied to this one. That's going to be like a public piece of art, and the town, with all the resources that we know the town has, should be kind of a separate process, and maybe even a competition in any other form that really has more time to be thoughtful, because just plastering something there or making it part of this, to me, it feels like we would not get the right result.
I'm all for making the right result, but I also have seen projects that look a certain way and then they're not delivered. So there has to be some kind of compromise there between this idea of we're going to give you a blank slate that could be still empty 3 years from now.
Well, yeah, but that's up to the town, because the town
I'm not
is
sure.
responsible for it.
I think
Let
that
him-
I understand the position that it's one view is it's fully up to the town. I'm suggesting that this is a very successful business moving into our community, that we're thrilled. We believe we've arrived as a community to have a Starbucks here. This is a multi-million-dollar company.
How does that relate to the painting, Anna?
I think
How does
that we
relate to the mural?
I think we have a partner at the table that I would like to see share more views as to what they're willing to do. A mural of this size should be doable through a partnership with this specific applicant.
So are you
Okay,
saying-
I get it, but I don't know how that relates to the subject matter of the application. I mean, I hear your point, and I support the intent.
The bylaw requires, it says shall, the visible view, I mean, Kate can quote it directly. I don't have the bylaws open in front of me, but there's enough in the bylaw to give us jurisdiction to make that appearance of the exterior very, very specific. Essentially, we're compromising by taking that wall to be fully empty until it's not. And so it's absolutely relevant what we put on there. And if
But I don't see it that way. I mean, I think the jurisdiction, we remove an access ladder to the roof, which was inappropriate. Corrections were made and materials were changed. I'm not sure that the bylaws address murals. I think that's an idea that is a part of participation of this building, of this proposed project with the town. Something that, especially with the marathon theme, I think is very appropriate. But I'm worried that we're going to start conflating things that are apples and oranges here, and then seems to me that would make us lose track of what is germane to this application.
Is it appropriate that we ask the applicant to say, put aside a donation of $3,000 toward the production of the painting, right? Toward buying the supplies, toward, whatever it is. Would that satisfy Anna's, hey, we need to do something, we have to,
I mean,
we have to bank on this right now?
Greg is nodding no. So I think that what we need to do is, what I'm hearing is there's consensus on the board that we like the mural. What I'm sharing is that there is no mural until someone pays for it. And so essentially we're voting on an empty wall. Let's be clear, we're not voting on a mural. So I'm not a huge fan of an empty wall. That's where I'm at. So if there's consensus on a mural, it's a fantasy. It doesn't exist until somebody pays for it and makes it happen. I just want to make that very, very clear.
Yeah, but Michael
So
Herbert.
we're
told
really
us that-
voting for an empty wall that somebody's going to have to pay for.
Yeah,
I-
but Michael
go ahead.
Herbert,
Go ahead, Marcel.
in the last meeting, Michael Herbert, the town manager, said that there were possibilities of funds that could be used to exactly address your concern, Anna, of making these something connected to Ashland.
Yes, and that requires. an
Michael
application.
Michael Herbert has just popped on. Michael, can you make a comment on that? Can you help us out?
Sure. I mean, I think it's important to note that if the planning board approves this project and it moves forward, that it'll still be private property. So the mural would still be painted on private property. We do have the sign and facade program, which offers funds to improve the facade of private projects, but it does require a matching component from the owner of the property. So there would need to be a financial contribution from the owner.
And I
Mr.
think that's my,
Salvatore, hold on.
I think he already waved no. to
Well,
that.
we're trying to come up with compromises here. So
Well, let me jump in here, please. With all respect to everybody, we've gone through a long, arduous process. We've made tons of changes that have cost us a lot more money. I think I stated this at the very beginning. This is not Starbucks. This is me as a developer. I have a finite rent that I get from Starbucks. And every meeting we have made changes that keep costing more. So if you want to attach a number for the mural, we will contribute $500. That is it. We are done. So please either accept this project the way that we've done it, and I think we've done a hell of a job here, or don't accept it. One or the other. But we need a vote going forward. I appreciate everybody's time, but I literally am at my wit's end. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
all right. It seems like Marcel would be okay with that. Anna probably isn't.
It's
I
not,
am
I'm
okay
not,
with
I mean, it's okay or not. I'm glad that there's clarity. We don't have a mural. The end. We don't. We have an empty wall until someone from the town is able to fund a mural. I appreciate the empty wall contribution, but that's all we have. So I'm not going to pretend that there's a mural there. I think we need to be very transparent with the public that we're voting for an empty wall.
Anna, we agreed to give you a canvas. It's up to you to deal with it.
And I
okay?
appreciate that.
We
I think
made
that's, I
changes
think
to-
that's, I
Hold
think
on.
that's
Changes to
absolutely
the
valuable.
facade.
I think that's absolutely valuable, and I appreciate that value add that you're willing to donate that wall, and that it is a private property. I'll add that it's a private property that is part of our community, and you are a community partner with us. And I, you know, while I'm disappointed that that's where we are, I am grateful for the mural possibility.
Great.
But
thank you.
I don't want the renderings to confuse the public. There is no mural there until someone steps up to make it
The
happen.
rendering was never intention to confuse the public.
And I think that the process today was very clear. They presented this. The attorney said that there was a canvas. They presented the rendering as an artistic representation of what could be. I don't think anybody's trying to confuse anybody. So I worry that with this type of conversation, we're veering away from the center of what we're trying to achieve here. Yes, it is a canvas. It is a potential for a mural. That's what has been discussed from the beginning. There's no confusion, and it's a public meeting, so everybody saw it. And I don't understand.
And Marcelo, I very much appreciate that. As you know, we've had other projects where renderings are available online, and there is in fact disagreement as to what ends up being there thereafter. So that's what I'm referencing. I agree with you that everyone on this call is not confused, but the renderings are online, and that's what the public might see if they don't watch this hearing. So I think that's an important distinction.
Okay, well, where does that leave us as far as this process? So I don't think it is a good idea for us to go through all the conditions tonight. I think everything is too heated. I would, if it is acceptable to the applicant, I would propose that we close the public hearing. We then work on the conditions between now and being on, and 2 weeks from now. On 2 weeks from now, we get those conditions in good shape. We look at them and take a final vote 2 weeks from now with the public hearing closed. I am definitely open to that. Is that acceptable?
Yes,
Referent?
it is acceptable to the applicant, yes.
Okay. So on that term, knowing that the continuance has been accepted for 2 weeks from today, at which point we will review conditions. Right, Peter?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to
Madam Chair, I
close.
hate to interrupt. Peter, you want 2 weeks and 1 day from today, don't you?
That's correct. And so we need a continuance into the next meeting. We need a continuance in the final action until the 10th, excuse me,
Till the
which
day
is
after.
the 10th, which is the
Right.
Friday of the day after. So I hope to
And
be
that-
stamping that
that-
in. before
And that
time.
the applicant would agree to that. That is
Okay,
correct.
and Jerry and I
Thank
can
you.
work out the paperwork tomorrow.
Look at us compromising. I love it. All right. So
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for the 399 Union Street application.
I'll second it.
and a roll call vote, starting with Anna.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Arjona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Fine, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So that public hearing is closed. We will be looking at this project for better, for worse, for the final time in 2 weeks. Peter, I know, is already working on the conditions. We will get those, obviously adding in what we talked about tonight and get those both to the planning board and to the applicant for review.
Thank
and be
you.
ready- And be ready to go in 2 weeks.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
You too.
Good night.
Thank you. Whew, what a start. All right. All right, next on our agenda is 9 to 49 Homer Avenue site plan and special permit application. This is continued from January 12th. So last time we saw this project, we just got a little taste of what was it about. We only had time for an introduction. Peter, do you want to add to anything about that discussion? Anything that's new? What do you think
Yes,
is-
I would. I would just like to make note that I think, I received the email after the last meeting, and I think it came up in a topic conversation regarding historical homes on the property. I did have contact and by email from the chair of the historical committee, and I did speak with the representative of this project, Mr. Terry Morris, attorney Terrence Morris, and he is well aware that in addition to a planning board process, that they do have to file for demolition permits, and the two houses in the house that do lie on this property are under the jurisdiction of the historical commission. So I just kind of want to put it out there in the open that it's been acknowledged and that the applicant is aware of the situation and plans in the coming weeks and or month to take that action. And so I just kind of want to put that out there. I also do want to note after the last meeting, I invited the applicant's representative, Mr. Terry Morris, and Mr. Ron Bork, who's the architect for this project, to walk our downtown. There's a lot of changes going on. Everyone knows in our downtown. Obviously, with the streetscape, the plans to bury the pipe, excuse me, the plans to bury the cable in the electrical lines, and the removal of power poles. And so I did take Mr. Morris and Mr. Bork for a quick tour of downtown Ashland, showing them the work that we have done in the last couple of years, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page regarding points of reference and what the vision is, and that the community set out in the process of our downtown redevelopment project that is continually going on, and I hope today successfully continued on with the work that's being done under the railroad tracks. So with that said, I just wanted to make note of that. And I think at this point, Chair, it's appropriate without any other comments that we hand it over to Mr. Morris and Mr. Bork to continue on the conversation.
Great. Who would like to, I don't know if there's new drawings to see, or we're going to kind of continue. I know we got a brief overview the last time, or if you want to get into more in depth and talking about the project, and then we can really start more of this conversation in earnest. Is that where you see it being?
I do.
Okay. So who are we turning over the
I would first introduce Mr. Terry Morris. Terry Morris, please introduce yourself to the planning board once again and continue on.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to extend our thanks to Peter for extending the invitation to us to walk the Main Street commercial corridor, the heart of the downtown district. Also in attendance, I think Ms. Beth Reynolds was also in attendance, Economic Development Director, and that was particularly informative because I recall from our earlier meeting, there were at least 2 members of the board had asked questions about economic viability, and I think Ms. Jurczyk actually made the comment that, vacant storefronts don't contribute much to the economic viability. We received preliminary indication that there seems to be great demand for this kind of space for smaller businesses and in this location. So we're encouraged with the prospect of going forward with this project as a result. I also want to take note that it was particularly useful to take this walkthrough starting at the Bagel Place at one end of the downtown and then terminating at Alden Street. Because we recall that certain members made comments. I think Mr. Arjona talked about making sure that the edge of our project was consistent with the considerable amount of money that had been spent to improve the downtown. And we got a real life hands-on experience with that as we stood within feet of looking at the open trench that was undergrounding your utilities. I think that was also, as I said, the economic viability was also a comment from Ms. Tesmanitsky, who talked about public connectivity to the site, as well as our relationship to the train station across the street and the visual proximity to the railroad and connectivity to the post office. So I think having walked the street, it really gave us an opportunity, and we had the plans available to us electronically, and we basically were able to cite how things were going to orient themselves to that street. So with that, I think we will I will turn over with your permission, Madam Chair, if we could share the screen. Our architect, Ron Bork, is here, and I think he did some extensive work on dealing with the last comment that was made, and that was we wanted to see some global view of how this project fits into the downtown, and we hope that in the coming slides we'll demonstrate that fact. So,
Please.
Ron?
Thank you, Terry. Brian Burke, Burke Design. I'm the project architect for this project. And Terry, if you could share the screen.
You want me to share it? I can. I have the.
Yep.
Okay, I can do that.
You guys are both of you are co-hosts.
Here we go.
Okay.
That's what you're looking for, right, Ron?
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
So I'd like to start with the existing conditions. And this is a slide that we've shown before, but I delineated a little more information, the property lines, and also identifying the photographs with the structures. And I believe that structures 4 and 5 are the historic structures that were mentioned earlier. I think in viewing this site plan from an aerial, what's most evident is there really is no edge to the site right now. It seems like, over time, areas between property lines and buildings have been paved over, and there's one continuous curb cut along Homer Avenue, which really doesn't provide any sense of security nor organization for this site. So, part of our goal is to have a single entry and exit on the left side of the site, where the number 2 is, that would allow us to control traffic and to direct it away from the existing residential neighborhood to the right. Terry, if you could take us to the next slide.
Sure.
So this is just basically an analysis of the local and a macro environment. And what I've done is I've identified, as we've seen in our reviews, how these pockets of density work together, and how our site in fact, becomes really a crucial element in connecting these together. If we look at number A, which is the yellow line, and that's sort of that traditional downtown corridor, New England downtown, where you had the fire station, the police station, all the organizing elements along that main street. And as the community grew, it still became the central business district. Item B is the residential transition zone, and that would be on the right side of our site. And it really is multifamily, single family, very few businesses, but it does have a direct connection to the downtown. It's walking distance, and our site is in close proximity to that. Item C, which I looked at as a commercial and residential transitional zone. So as you drive outside of the downtown, it starts to filter itself out for businesses, maybe becomes more the services of attorneys and dentists and doctors, and then a mix of residential as well. So you're starting getting a filtering away from that core downtown. Item D is also a commercial residential transitional zone where you do have Front Street that does have a mix of businesses. I believe it's a Masonic Lodge, hardware store, and then it filters into residential. So you're starting to see this sort of bleeding out and transitioning out from the central downtown core. Item E is the exterior community space or the village green. And it is a long linear space that's abutted by Front Street, Main Street, and the MBTA rail line, which also has a fence there. So it really denies you access from that side, and it denies you access from Homer Street. But it is a strong organizing element for the community. I believe the farmers market's there. I'm sure there are other community activities throughout the year which are there. So it is something that really wants to be acknowledged and respected. Item F is off to the right. There's a commercial block of office, I believe office space and commercial space it's within walking distance of downtown, so it still has connectivity. It's a little weaker, but by having our site where it is, it does help to strengthen that because it does provide amenities, to those folks, within walking distance. And the yellow circle is our proposed site. So Terry, if we go to a little more micro view. So what we've done here is we've taken a look at how the elements in close proximity to our site affect our decision-making and look to help us to organize our site better to be able to tie into the overall community scape. So if we look at the left side, is a note there saying the traditional New England downtown model extends to the site and becomes a termination point along Homer Street. So currently, with the way our site is configured, it does not lend itself to being a real organizing element at this time. What our goal is to create a space in a project that allows the public to want to be able to walk down there and it becomes sort of that little extension of the downtown. So we're tying into the main concept of the traditional New England downtown. We're organizing a site that allows us to do that and to create amenities for residents and visitors. The transitional zone on the item D at the top right. So what this does, traditional commercial to residence use forms a street edge along the green space on Front Street. And as I was walking with Peter and Beth and discussing sort of that downtown feel, and we started to look at things like, sometimes I use the term missing teeth. So you have communities that they had a very cohesive store frontage over time. And, eventually you'll have a fire, you'll have something that will happen that will create pockets, which could be opportunity, and they could be, in some cases, not opportunities. But the importance of having a strong street edge so that from a pedestrian standpoint, being able to walk down that street and feeling that there is a cohesiveness to it, that you're not walking through 5 lots of nothing before you get to the next entity, is important. And especially where you're fronting a green space, you do want to encourage as much activity as possible between the green space and either the commercial or the residential people adjacent to it. The visual connection to the green space. So our site, unfortunately, does not have direct access to the green space because of the MBTA. Our path will be to walk down to the corner of Homer Street and walk up Main Street and pass the tracks into the green space. So it is in close proximity. It's more of a visual connector than it is a physical connector. And that's just a matter of, there's no choice to that. The MBTA is there. So our site creates a street edge. So currently, there is no street edge along that, as we've seen from that first slide. So our goal is to create a cohesive street edge that allows for, both residents, visitors to enjoy the outdoor spaces, to have that same sense of having outdoor activity, outdoor cafe seating as the bagel place that we view it as earlier. The big difference is that we feel that we want to create an edge that has more than just building, plaza, street. So we're creating a building, plaza / landscape, sidewalk, street. So we're creating separate zones within that to give a level of comfort, a level of thank you, Terry. A level of comfort, a level of being able to separate yourself from the daily activity of car travel and cars going by and things like that. And also to help modulate the spaces into smaller pedestrian sort of voyages where you're not walking along a facade that's 100 feet long. You're walking along a facade that's 40 feet or 30 feet. Then you have a little pocket inside there. Then you have the next one. So we're trying to create that feel that traditionally New England towns had. If we go back, Terry, back one more slide. Yeah, one more. I think we have one more to finish. Yep.
This is 4, it's on 5.
I think we were done with 4, I believe. Go back to 4. I think I made one other comment. And I'm trying to go through these quickly. So, back.
Here.
Back. Yeah. Okay, right there.
Okay.
So then the last comment was that we have a proposed pocket park, which creates a step-down zone for massing transition between the commercial residential into the multifamily and single-family residential zone.
Right here.
And that occurs, there's an existing building, which I believe is maybe a car parts or some paint store to the south. And then from that point on, we would have a separation with our pocket park that would be accessible to the public. And then the transition back into the building as it turns Homer Street and continues to the downtown. So if you go to the next slide. So this, I'm going to go to, so on the left, the Village Green public space allows for a farmer's market and other public amenities. Access to the site is going to be from the Main Street sidewalk. The MBTA tracks create a physical barrier to direct access to the green space activity. So we have a visual connection, but not a physical one. The site vehicular access along Homer Ave controls the access point away from the residential neighborhood. So we're cognizant of not wanting to run traffic through the residential neighborhood, to have a very well-defined control point for in and out traffic. And I believe
Pedestrian safety.
Yes.
Pedestrian safety too, Ron.
I'm sorry. Yeah, and safety by being able to have that control point. And we do have setback on the left side so that there is visibility. It's not a building up against the driveway. There's actually a space there. And then what's interesting is as we were walking the site, there's there's a curved sidewalk which compresses you as you walk. You have no choice. The road is there, the building is there, and the sidewalk is only so wide. So as you turn the corner, you get almost this explosion of space because you don't expect it. So as you're walking by, the building will open up to the left and in front of you, and then you'll really begin to see the value of the landscaping and the setbacks of the building facade and the pockets created and that activity you're seeing for the next 140 feet in front of you. And it's interesting because you really don't see it until you turn that corner. So I think that's a very valuable design element. There's also the historic landmark building across the street, which is the Richardson building, I believe.
Train
And
station.
Yep, the old train station. It presents an opportunity for future commercial development and to strengthen the street edge along Homer Ave. So it helps to
Same-
reinforce that you don't have a bleeding edge where the train station is.
Same person
Where the
owns
train
both
tracks are.
properties, Ron, point that out.
Pardon
Same
me?
entity owns both properties.
Same entity owns both properties, right? So there's an opportunity there. And then the street edge presents setback storefronts with defining landscape to soften the edges and create spaces of separation from vehicular traffic. So you do it, you can sit there, you can have your bagel, your donut, your coffee in an environment where you're at eye level with some very nice landscaping, and you're really getting that separation and that sense of calm. Along Homer Ave, we have the pocket park, which we discuss, and that shows you the location relative to the adjacent building, which is not on our property. But it does create a separation. It allows for public amenity, and we think that that's in the right location. So I think with that, we have a few renderings, and these are the same renderings that we saw, but it was really just to try to reinforce the discussion and to allow you to see, kind of where our thought process was. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. So just to everyone to understand the what the plan is tonight, and I'm happy to have input from the board. Was going to go through again, open it up to the planning board for any questions to the applicant, and then open it up to public comment tonight. I know I didn't do that last time, and so I want to take the opportunity to do that tonight. So that said, I will open it up, questions from the board.
I have a few, Tricia.
Yep, go ahead, Anna.
Marcel, did you want to go first?
No, I was giving you
Okay.
the floor first. I'll go after you.
First, I'll say the locality analysis I think is spectacular. I wish we had that on every project. So kudos to the applicant for that. That was extremely insightful and showed a deep understanding of how this could relate to the community. And so that was really cool. So thank you for that. I have a couple of kind of quick and dirty questions, just sort of curious of the applicant's reaction to it. Could we go to the visual where you could kind of see above the above view? Yes, that one. No, sorry, this one right here. And the question I had is, I'm just kind of curious if there's any interest from the applicant or the board in seeing that green space that's internal to the development be more open towards the public view. In other words, is there a way to maybe consider splitting that big block into 2 blocks and opening up some of those green spaces more so that we have more of a community village feeling of the public being able to pass through that space, not just around it? Just really the only comment and question I had.
One of the things.
That's a great comment. It's you need. What has to be understood is that's actually on the second floor. So this is a roof plan looking down on the entire complex. So what you're seeing is.
However, we did consider opening an entry into the site and creating an interior mall effect by having that kind of public space in a different configuration on the first level. That was something that we talked about. We hadn't explored it. We're basically throwing it out on the table to get some comment from the board members.
I think that'd be really exciting. I think my kind of feeling as I'm looking at the site, especially with your locality analysis, is, hey, you're trying to do something thoughtful here. You're trying to kind of make this congruent with the community and create that kind of impact, which I appreciate. And sort of, I'm also thinking about that block feeling that you're also creating. I think there is some concern in our community about these sort of buildings coming in that take off kind of blocks, right? Creating more of a city feel rather than a town feel. And so I'm trying to find that compromise. And I personally would love to hear more about that idea of opening up that courtyard, giving us more of a passing through feeling rather than this big block building on a corner.
I kind of just, I'm going to push back on the block building idea, and the criteria we had was pretty rigid. I mean, 35 feet max, very limited flat roofs. And with a site like this, with the configuration of a building like this, the solution was to have that second floor terrace, which becomes kind of resident village space, because the units themselves open up onto it, and they're 2-story units. So everybody's living space is opening up onto it. The bedroom's on the second floor. I know there's a comment Marcella had about the window locations and things like that, and we can deal with that. But from a conceptual standpoint, this was a reaction to a very difficult site to make work with a building that is the depth of an apartment unit.
Understood.
Right? Because so that space on the second floor, which if you remember, we had some renderings of that our designer did, were really intentioned sort of the village in the village, right?
Understood. It's more for the residents. Is
It's
there
more for the residents, right? And unfortunately, if we try to open it up on the first floor, we have, basically our total redesign of the second and third floors, because it just won't work, because these are actually outdoor spaces which are part of the entry system for those units. So our goal is to give everyone in the building access to that space, to give the public access to the pocket park, and then have a green area behind it, which could be a dual use space, so that if someone's walking their dog or someone wants to lay out in the sun and things like that, that you're tying the community together. So we have spaces dedicated to our residents. We have spaces dedicated to both our residents and the neighborhood, and we have spaces dedicated to the neighborhood. So we're trying to sort of bridge that gap. And in this I don't know what happened there.
Go ahead.
So that's sort of, I know it's tempting. You look at it and you think that that's on the first floor. It's actually a level up, and it's tied to the building, the bigger building system.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be curious to hear more about from other board members. My view is that it'd be interesting to see more of a community pathways through somehow, first floor or otherwise. And then my only other comment is the Upper Charles Trail Committee had sent in some thoughts about the importance of pedestrian, bicycle road use on this road, as far as a potential passing through for the Upper Charles Trail. And at some point, we should probably discuss that as well.
Okay.
So if I may, so I agree with Anna that the site analysis is very helpful, and I think it really allows everybody to really understand how the project is reacting to all those forces. So I think that's good. But I agree with Mr. Bork about the complexity of the site. This is a site that's very difficult to design. The geometry is complicated, and I think it's been done with skill. And I actually think that the articulation of the facade and on the public way really it breaks down the volumes in a way that is attractive and give it scale. And I think it's a good buffer. I think the project needs to retain a public face and then keep the back to the residents, because you need to have a successful residential system. You have to have that sense of community and protection. And I think this project is doing it in a reasonably good way. I was surprised to hear that pocket park is going to be open to the public. I don't know how that's going to be managed, but if that is the case, I think that's great. The last thing we want is to just things that are fenced off. So I'm happy to hear that. And lastly, I believe it was mentioned that you guys walked the downtown with Peter. I made a comment last time. I want to reiterate it, that the design of all this, the curb cuts, the curbing, the sidewalks and everything would need to, for me, it has to be consistent with what the rest of the downtown is doing in materiality and design. Am I hearing this right? That is the direction that you are proposing?
Yes, Mr. Arjona, when we walked the site, we noticed that there was a distinction between the walking path and the brick. The sidewalks were widened in that was a brick element. We're certainly going to do something consistent with that treatment.
Okay, great. So other than that, I think that the how the retail develops, I mean, we would have to see more of that concept. I like the potential to have different businesses there. Maybe something to consider later on would be to make sure that and I don't know if Beth has indicated something on this regard. Maybe Peter can enlighten us. Make sure that the business here are not going to detract or compete from other small businesses that we have in the downtown, to make sure that it's
well, that's why we were glad that Ms. Reynolds came along on for the visit. I asked her about it. I basically mentioned to her that comment had been made by two members about the economic viability of retail space, which has become more of a concern everywhere, given the shopping habits of the public. But smaller businesses, but businesses that don't necessarily do e-business, but want to see people in person. I think it's a kind of Beth indicated to us that she's had a lot of inquiries about space in Ashland, but there is a dearth of space available. So we're hoping this will fill a very real need.
Okay, I don't have anything else, Trisha. I think I may have some comments later on more of the detailing of the building, but I think the project is going in a very good direction, in my view.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep, we'll definitely have a lot more opportunities for comment. Kevin or Kate, do you want to weigh in at this time, or?
I am going to say, I mean, I've already been contacted with people that absolutely care about historic buildings on the site, and I know there's a process for that. But in good conscience for constituents who have asked and myself, is there any consideration of regrouping to save? I mean, I think perhaps the one the farthest over, at least, and integrate that in the project. And if there was some way to do that, that kind of meets, I think, the expectation, or that I think that Anna was talking about, of more the walkable, a village, that feeling. So that's my only comment at this time.
Has that been looked at as part of a possibility of if either of those buildings could be saved, and were there any thought given to that? The answer might have been they can't be, but was there any thought given to it?
Well, I'll answer that, Terry. Well, we have underground parking under the entire site. So it would be impossible to make the ramps work and to incorporate the number of spaces that are required if we could not use the entire site.
And also, we had it. I don't have it, but this corner of the site, which you can see where my arrow is, we have two level spaces that actually front on that public park. In other words, it presents eyes on the street, so to speak, on that corner of the building, which also we believe establishes a sense of residential connectivity by having those two units in that location. I did look closely, because I consider myself as a historic preservationist. I live in an 1895 Victorian home, and those buildings, there's been a lot of changes made. For example, the porches have been totally changed to some material that's deteriorating. So I think we look forward to presenting the matter before the Historic Commission, see how they feel, and we'll certainly take any concerns that people have into advisement. But at this point, we had no plans to save them because at first blush, they didn't look as if they were salvageable or making a meaningful contribution to the streetscape. But that's an open question. We have open minds.
Understood. Kevin, anything at this time?
Yeah, just quickly, the comment that we had from the Upper Charles Trail Committee, I had seen that too. So just, I hope that the applicant is aware of that. I don't know if it got passed along from Peter, but I guess the trail will be running down Homer Ave, at least temporarily, but it sounds like long-term temporarily. So I don't believe the downtown project adds a bike lane into Homer Ave, but maybe it's something you could accommodate for in your sidewalk space where the bikes could maybe mount the curb there and have their own space on the sidewalk or something like that to just kind of help that trail tie together. And then the other question I have is trying to tie in to the look and feel of the old train station across the street. Like I know it's a rough early rendering that we're looking at of the facade of this new building, but if there's just any way, maybe you could use some elements of that similar stone or something like that to give some tie to the historic structure across the road, especially where we're, losing these older, maybe not salvageable historic homes on the property. At least that's something more visually appealing that you could use to tie into.
That sounds like a great bullet point to pass on to our colleagues on the design review committee when this goes their direction. So I'm going to make a note of that, and I'm sure there'll be others as well. Oh, sorry. So anything else, Kevin? Did I cut you off?
You mentioned something about the owner of the property owns some other property. They own the railroad station as well?
Yes, that's correct. The same entity owns both the rail station and this property.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe there's even something more to be said there, or and I don't know how big the lot is across the street there and how much of that is just the MBTA's right away, but if there's additional landscaping and stuff that could be tied in to make this visually appealing on both sides of the street as you turn down Homer.
If I could add to that, I think that could be kind of worked with the Upper Charles Trail comments as well. Like we're almost creating like a modern version of a transport pedestrian neighborhood feel, right? So you could have crosswalks and bike paths and maybe even a bus shelter or something to give it that pedestrian downtown feel on that side, to almost in contrast to the historical train station that may be developed down the line. So I also kind of want to mirror Kevin's comment that it would be interesting to see design review use not just the train station, but also the fire station. And so there's other development in the area that's very historic that would be nice to pay homage to somehow through this development.
Peter, can you make sure, if it hasn't already, can you make sure that letter from the Trails Committee finds its way to Mr. Morris and Mr. Bork?
Yes, I'll make note
Yeah.
of it. I don't know if that has, they come in obviously during the busy week. And also I do owe Ron and Terry the plans for the downtown as well, as they kind of look at materials and usage in sidewalks. So I kind of want to make sure. But yes, it's on my to-do list as well.
Okay, great.
I have a comment.
Please.
So Kevin, I do appreciate what you said and tying into the Richardson train station, try and pick up the vocabulary. What we have to be cautious of was Richardson was a great architect, and to mimic, and you see this happen all the time, where we try to mimic train stations that have brackets that are not heavy enough visually, that try to just pay homage to it, but actually do the opposite in some instances. So I do agree with you, and maybe there's a way we can transition. So when you turn that corner that I talked about and then things open up, you're getting the sense that the train station is part of the building. It's just been separated by the street. But as far as like picking up elements, I mean, just if you look at those brackets are 6 feet and they're, 8x8 lumber. So to try to put it on.
Yeah, I think that the intent is to be inspired by it, but please do not mimic it.
Yes, okay, great. Yeah, I just want to be clear on that because we fail so many times when we do that.
I don't think Kevin's intention was to build a second train station. I don't think that's what he had in mind.
I know the code kind of tells you what the building's shape sort of should be, and there were some strict regulations to follow there from the what came out of the previous downtown study. But I was just thinking, materials and maybe just even having like benches and things made out of a similar stone in your little front seating areas, or and colors that would go along with it or something like that. It's just,
how did the two talk together?
Not having it look like the as plain as the rendering looks now, but again, I know that's just an early rendering.
Right. How do they talk to each other from across the street? That's the discussion.
Okay, good. We're on the same page.
So why don't at this time, if there's any members of the public that would want to weigh in for the first time on this project, please raise your hand. I'm calling out now. Please get in line now, not at the last minute, folks. And Peter, I'll let you manage any traffic that we have.
Sure. Number one, Mr. Mark DeSoni, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the board.
Yeah, Mark Sony, good evening again, 49 Hawthorne Road. Seems like an ambitious idea to have for Homer Ave. And I'm looking at what you got up here in the facing picture. That's dated September 28th of last year. How is this going to be actually construct and begin? You go through the hoops and circles and stuff like that of the boards, but how, if you actually, once you actually get started and everything gets to be okay, is the property going to be able to handle all the construction? That's one question.
I don't quite understand, Mark, your question. Could you try to rephrase it, please?
Okay. The existing buildings on Homer Ave that are there.
Yes.
They're flat roof and there's a garage and a push in 2 or 3 other buildings, other businesses. Is the base of those roofs, the first floor tops, are they going to be firm enough to use to be able to work construction on top of? That's one question.
Oh, the existing buildings on the site, again, since they're all over 50 years old, we would have to go to the Historic Commission, demolish not only the 2 buildings you see up here on this photo, but also the existing buildings that are on the site now, the commercial buildings. Those will all be coming down if approved by the Historic Commission.
Oh, okay, and for my second question, I'm gonna need to see the triangle with the green center. Yeah, that is, if it does get passed, is all that property, is that all going to get used for the site and property lines, and that's what is it all going to be used like that?
The building, what's outlined in gray is the footprint of the building itself. And then what's around it is all open air. So that parking, this parking here along the backside is open air parking. This is the transition park that we talked about, the Pocket Park. The driveway coming in off of Homer Ave comes in here. And here is the open, the parklets, so to speak, in front of the building on Homer Ave itself.
Okay, last question. I gotta need another picture. It's the front, the brown front. Yeah, that
This, yeah,
Yeah, that right there. It says there, the proposed mixed-use development. And that's January 12th of this year. Okay, what's the goal? What's the attraction tenants that you're gonna want to have in there compared to a mixed development, a mixed use? What are you trying to match up with the mixed use development to residents living there?
well, one of the things we hope to do by introducing a critical mass of residents to the site, that will encourage shopping at the businesses, not only here in this building or this property, but businesses along Main Street itself. So that's the idea of introducing mixed use into the downtown, as I understand it.
Okay, and last one on this with this picture here. The 3-block and the pushed in, like the 2 doors, porch patio, floor patio, is that going to be, if it works, is that going to be a some sort of business that's going to be on the site?
Where are you talking about? Which element, Mark?
Okay, from the left corner,
Left
very
corner,
left
yeah,
corner,
Yep.
towards Alden Street,
yeah,
coming down 3 frontages, and then the indent,
Yeah.
the pushed in, the flat with the 2 white doors.
these doors here,
Come further down.
here.
It's where the it's the wind. It's where the
These are
gray
not, these are not
patio blocks
doors.
are.
These aren't doors. The doors are located here.
Mark, I think the entire first floor in this view is businesses. Am I
Correct.
right?
Yes,
Is
that's
that your
correct.
question? The entire first
Oh.
floor in this image is our business. Is that,
So
Thank
that's
you,
what
Madam
that-
Chair.
so
Thank
that-
you. I didn't,
yeah,
yeah.
it's good. I was asking the wide, the rectangle shape.
so something above the first floor?
On the ground floor, street level.
Yeah, so
These are
everything on the ground floor
transom.
street level are businesses.
Right,
So-
And
so-
everything on the second and third floor are residential.
right.
Okay.
So business on the ground, mixed businesses on the ground, and the apartments on top.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Yeah,
Economic, and you had the walkthrough, you had Beth Reynolds, the economic director. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for in economic growth, stuff like this that can make the downtown center and have an extension off of Main Street that has other places to go away from Main Street.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We need to go
Thank
on
you.
to the next
All set.
resident. Thank you.
thank you so much, Mark, and thank you, Chair. The next person up is Ms. Joan Goodfrady.
Hello, I just have a couple of questions. One that Mark made me think about was I think what he was looking at was where the 2 doors are next to each other, and there's a bench on the side, right in the middle. In the middle, it's basically the middle of the project. To the right. To the
By the
right.
guy in the red
Yeah,
shirt?
Red shirt, right.
I think those are windows.
Yeah,
Yes,
these are all windows.
but aren't those 2 doors there too?
Now, these doors here,
Yeah.
these are
that's-
doors,
yeah.
the rest is
Well, that
windows.
whole square, I think what triggered in my head when he asked, although that may not have been his question, is that area going to be basically owned by the commercial building, the commercial business that's there, as far as if, let's say it was a restaurant, is it going to be their patio, or is it going to be a public area? That would be one question.
We haven't really discussed the idea of a restaurant or an eating facility there, but the idea to create outdoor space on the sidewalks and extend the sidewalk basically into these inlets in the building is to invite people to come and sit, even if it's active, if they're eating something here at a table or if they're simply resting themselves here on a bench.
So but it's basically public space or for the public to use.
Yes, yeah, of course, with ground floor commercial, it should be public space. We want to invite people in.
Okay. The other thing, so as full disclosure here, I'm on the historic commission, but I'm speaking as a resident. And I was wondering if there was any thought given to creating more of a meandering area with commercial on the bottom, with 2 or 3 commercial buildings on the bottom around the back, around the inside space, keeping the historic buildings and putting commercial on the bottom and apartments on the top, but having separate buildings so that there's more of an open, less of a imposing structure that to me changes to the look of downtown in a huge way. I would much like to see more of a meandering way, more like, I guess if you ever been down to Pine Hills in Plymouth, that type of thing, where they have a very functional and profitable area that people can congregate inside. They have an area where they can have trucks, and they have it's not a big area, not taking up a lot of your space, but there are some common areas that make it a very habitable space for the town, as well as profitable. Thank you.
I have to ask my architect that question. I don't mean to put the shine the light on him, but
No, that's fine. Terry, can you take me back to the first slide
sure.
and which shows the existing conditions? And Joan, I think this sort of goes to your thought of creating those spaces that are, they're kind of funky. They're a little off skew as these buildings are. To be able to have sort of that exploration space and landscape and things like that. The reality is if you look at just this image, you can see the parking and the amount of space that's actually becomes unusable because of the configuration of the buildings. And we're hitting 40 some odd parking spaces in the basement that we would have to relocate up here. Wouldn't be able to park in the basement. We wouldn't be able to. So it really makes the project untenable in that sense. I understand what you're saying, but with this site, I think it would be extremely difficult to accomplish that.
But you wouldn't,
not disrespecting the historical nature of the buildings and things like that. It's just I'm talking from a design standpoint.
No, I understand. I do think, obviously, if you had the separate buildings and you would have to have less apartments, obviously, and less parking would be required. I do also
less commercial too.
No, I think honestly, I think you could probably get five basic commercial entities out of it, given the space. They would just be more spaced out around a more central area. I'm not an architect, so I'm not pretend to be. But Mark also brought up something that was bothering me, and I don't know if it got answered or maybe I misunderstood him again. But is the sub parking, the buildings around it looks like this space is going to be almost every inch of the space is going to be used in some way, and is this going to impact the buildings around it when you try to start pulling out into a parking? That's going to create a huge hole in the middle, I guess, for all intents and purposes. I don't know what else to call it.
I think the question that keeps coming up, Mr. Bork, is about being able to picture how do you get that underground parking in without disturbing all of these little buildings that are surrounding it. Obviously this happens time and again in Boston,
sure,
but it doesn't happen in Ashland. So that's a bit of a curious question.
Okay, no, that's a valid question. So I'll answer that. So the extent of the underground parking is the perimeter of the building in the front, the perimeter of the building on the left side of the screen, and then it goes to 12 feet from the property line at the rear. So basically the center line of the gazebo is actually a foundation wall. So there's 12 feet of soil between that and the property line on Alden Street. So we're not impacting where you see the surface parking. that will not be impacted by any excavation other than the area of repose for the soil. So the parking garage itself is essentially underneath the building with a small section of it underneath a portion of the park. And 12 feet from the property line,
Does that help you
which gives us
picture it?
sufficient,
It does.
which gives us sufficient, space. It's basically a 10-foot foundation or 12-foot foundation. So it's not shoring. It's not going to be right up against someone's property line. And we're off Homer Street sidewalk by 8 feet and 10, 12 feet in some cases.
No. As I saw a side view that made it appear as if it was much closer to the lot line, as far as not necessarily the sub area, but the building itself appeared to be closer.
Well, if you look at the parking, so we require 24 feet on the left side. We require 24 feet of backup and 18 feet of space
19.
buffer. So that gives you a sense of how far that is.
Okay. Okay. And on my last question, on the right-hand side by Alden Street, above the pocket park, is how wide is that sidewalk or that area from the building to the road?
There's an 8-foot setback on that side, so it's 8 foot to the property line. Then the property line to the curbing is whatever the standard is, 5 feet or 6 feet.
Yeah.
Right, so if you look at the Alden Street, it says public, and then there's a dimension there of 8 feet. That's from our corner of the building to the property line. Then from the property line to the sidewalk is public space, it's Ashland space. So if it's a 5 or 6 foot sidewalk, you add those up and then you're at the street.
Okay. All right.
And that space, that 8 foot space will be landscaped.
Okay. So,
So
okay. Thank
do
you.
you have, okay, thank you. Last
Can I ask
question.
Can I ask a clarifying question at some point after the public comment?
Yeah, I'm just taking one last speaker, which is Joe Mignani, who's been waiting, and then you're on, Anna.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair. Great presentation so far. I'm just kind of curious, is this a similar design that we're looking at that was constructed at 12 Pond Street with the parking under the building? Similar design structure with that location?
No, different architects.
Different architects, but is it a similar design though? Because it appears to be. And I'm just kind of curious whether or not it is.
Yeah, so on the 12 Pond Street project, Joe, and this may be your question, the parking is under the building, but it's not below grade. So
Right.
this parking is below grade. Is that right?
That's
Okay.
correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right, I did not understand that, and thank you, Mr. Morris, for making that clarification. So that concerns me. Will there be an environmental impact study done on that location?
I believe there already has been, and I'm told it's clean.
Okay, for two purposes. One, not just in Nyanza, but it was a bus parking lot for many, many, many years. So, concerned about any leakages or anything like that. That's just one thing with respect to that. The other is, and I apologize, I missed the first portion of your presentation. You may have said this already. What are the number of living units that are being proposed for this location?
29.
29. And out of those 29, what is the affordability percentage?
At least 10%.
At least 10%. Okay. All right. I think Mr. Zambudo knows where I may go with that next question. Is there any wiggle room for that 10%?
I believe there is, although I believe there is.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to hold you to it, but I know these are early discussions. So I just wanted to put it out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, question to oh, sorry, Anna, you had wanted to add
Yeah,
something.
I just wanted a clarification. Looking at this, the historical landmark building, the train station, did I hear that it's owned by the same folks and there might be opportunity to develop that in the future for commercial use?
It is owned by the same entity that both entities own
Yeah.
both properties, Anna.
Is there any interest in having a discussion about this in the bigger picture? And the reason I say that is, I started looking at other towns that have these types of train stations, and there seems to be some interesting things the developers do. And I'm thinking specifically of the Southport Railroad Station in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I would encourage, Ron, you might find these interesting. If you look at there's an architecture company called Roger Ferris and Partners, and what they did there in 2017 might be inspiring. But it got me thinking about this idea that this could, down the line, we could be talking about developing that train station, and how that train station development is going to be speaking back, if you will. I'm using Trisha's comment that this building needs to speak to the train station, but the train station is going to have to speak back. And so I wonder if we should be thinking about this broadly, outside of the construct of that particular proposal right now. And I'm curious if the developer is considering that project sooner than later, and if we should be thinking about it congruent altogether, because whatever it is we're building in this space could be impacted by that space. And when we're having discussions like, hey, can we save a historic building here or there, but there's no wiggle room because then we have to take away commercial space. Well, in theory, we could add commercial space to the train station and have less commercial space on this side, and therefore save a historic building. So I'm very curious about broadening this discussion to understand your long-term vision relative to the commercial development across the street at the train station.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, there's no definitive plans to develop the train station property. I think that was acquired to give some flexibility in the development of this site should that need arise. However, they are to be treated separately. I think that the owners are basically looking at to see how the development of this much larger parcel goes before making any decision about the future of the train station. One thing is for sure, it's not going away, so it'll be there.
Is that green area right next to it owned by you guys as well, or is that public land?
Are you talking about, I believe that we own this much, we own this land over here and some of this land here. At some point, this is public land up to a point. I don't have that plan in front of me, so I will have an answer for you next time we meet, though.
Yeah, this Richardson train station is actually, I think, one of the ones that it's highly suspected that it's by Richardson, but there's actually, I believe, no documentation to kind of prove that to be so, though the Richardson's train stations are all up and down this line. So it likely is. But even in that regard, that it's something that I can see what you're talking about, that they could talk up to each other in terms of whatever it is, color, or how it might be refinished. But that building is something special in no uncertain terms for Ashland, and I'm fairly certain the owner recognizes that. So.
Yeah, and Madam Chairman, I can tell you that there's almost an identical Richardson station along the Green Line in Newton.
Oh, agreed. I just don't think there's the documentation exists.
No, but they have in Newton. They've documented. It's almost got the same stone pattern. You'll notice there is a stone pattern on the wall that.
There's a lot of copycats of Richardson too. I think it is, but I'm not a historian that can evaluate that. I'm just saying I think the paper, when I looked at it before, what I read was that the paper trail is missing for this particular station. That's all I'm saying. So that said, and seeing no more public comments, planning board, where do we see this going? Where do we want to see this go? Do we want to come back next time and talk about environmental issues? Do we have an agenda that we want to talk about? Or at what point do we want to send this to the design review committee and have them obviously this is a kind of a big gray block right now. I don't really anticipate that Mr. Bork imagines it being completely painted gray in the end. Is this something that goes in that direction, or is this, do we have more we want to talk about here?
I think,
Marcel?
I'm sorry, Anna.
No, it's your turn, go.
I think your points are exactly what I was thinking. I think talking about some environmental, and I think Joe made a good point, making sure that we understand the results of the ground testing. I think that would be critical for everybody to know what are we dealing with here. But I think this would be a good time that while we keep going on the environmental on the side part of it, that we actually craft a series of points for the design review to touch on and try to make them explicit and simple, so that we really get the best process with this project. I think we've advanced that, but I think we've talked enough that until some design review process has taken place, there's not much that we're going to be adding to it, to the architecture of the site, of the application. So that would be my recommendation.
But are you saying, Marcel, that we should meet with this project again to talk about environmental, maybe to talk about parking in a closer way, to talk about traffic safety, to talk about those larger issues, and at the same time form a list for the design review committee in order to pass it on? Is that what you're saying?
I think if the process could be in parallel, I don't see why not, but I would like to talk about maybe have a higher level of detail of understanding the streetscape and how the public way is going to be handled, all the things that Anna mentioned before, and I believe Kevin also. And we can talk about the site and all those issues while the design review addresses some of the things that we would like them to explore.
Madam Chairman, I can recall from a previous experience before with the planning board and the design review committee that we were hopscotching every other week. We were meeting with one or the other in a checkerboard fashion. I don't think that ties into what Marcelo has said about pursuing parallel tracks. If you were hopeful that you would send us to the design review committee sooner rather than later.
If well, let me hear from some other members of the board, and we'll see how we're going to proceed on that. Anna?
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I definitely think this should go to design review sooner than later. I don't necessarily think that it should only go there once. You know, if the applicant is open to kind of, I think we need to be very, very specific as to what we want from design review, so that we give them direction. That's one of our focuses for this year, is to be much more specific. So it needs to be in written form, and hopefully we can be efficient. But I think it's time for that.
So we need that list then. Are there other design review committee planning board members? Is there anyone who has a different opinion on this? Should we make that list now for design review committee?
I think there's just two things that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kate.
No, go ahead.
There's two things to me that are maybe pretty quick and easy to look at. Just make sure that like they're not going to have to lop a corner off the building. And one is just having them get the plans in hand from downtown, from Peter, take a look at what the sidewalk looks like, and to take into consideration the Upper Charles Trail, that we'd like to see bike lanes in both direction on this street in some way, shape, or form. And the other is just a quick check with the fire department that they're okay with no circulation around the building and being able to get in here in case there was some sort of emergency. I love the underground parking. I know I hate, we've been told by other people that they can't do it because you can do it no matter what. But dead end here, I'd be a game changer if the fire department says no.
Yeah, so I
Kevin, if I could add,
wait, hold on. Chair's interrupting.
Okay.
So I would say that that part of it, safety, fire, access, is going to remain in the court of the planning board. So is that something we would have on our next meeting to address, while simultaneously the design review would start looking at surface treatments, elevations, those things that are more in their purview?
I think that's what the site, the continuation of the site review on our side can really expand on. I think Kevin's points are really the next steps for us, I think.
Okay. So, and Kate, did you want to weigh in?
Yes, please. So I would like to see us go very carefully through everything that's an exception. And I don't know that we have to make decisions on it right away, but what I think I've seen on my time on the board is that if we're not right away commenting those, that people tend to take it as those are a given. And I thought we already settled that. And I am not on that pathway on anything about that. I think you all know that. So I would just like to be very, very transparent about that and see. And again, I don't think we should be pushed to make a decision about them, but really spell those out. I haven't actually had to get yet the time with the exact zoning and the exemptions, but I would like us to talk about that.
Okay, I agree. I would say this is my opinion, and I'm looking for feedback. But I think we need one more meeting on this before we hand it off to design review. And I believe it is for, and then maybe we won't hopscotch. Maybe we'll let them hand a little bit before it comes back to us. And I think it is for fire, for traffic, for looking closely at the parking, for looking at all the conditions that Kate just mentioned. What are they and what do we think about them? For getting a little better answer on affordability, for all of these things that are in our court. And in looking at them, we also form that during the same meeting, we form the list for the design review committee, and then it's ready to go. Does that
I think
sound
that's a good idea. Just don't forget to include the, I thought there was one more element, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh, I just had it. You had one
My
more.
my list was not complete by any means.
Okay, good. Yeah.
No.
Oh, the environmental stuff as well.
Yes.
Next time. Yep.
All right. Okay, Mr. Morris.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I defer to the planning director. I think there's something called a technical review team, which is all the municipal stakeholders, police, fire, engineering, who might have a stake in the project, that would review and provide one-stop shopping for developers or petitioners to get feedback from the various departments. I would think that the fire review would come under that. That
It
purview
would.
wouldn't. Pardon?
So hi, Terry. Hi, obviously Peter Massey, town planner. I agree, Terry. We talked about this on the view. On our walk through the town, and I think as I offered, I think we need departments on board from the DPW, from a traffic standpoint, to go through the process, to go through what is happening, and so I do plan to work with the applicant in the coming week to set up that meeting. And to do that as well. So I think that just to kind of put out there to the planning board, and that review will take place as the plan continually makes its way down to other departments within the community.
So what's our time frame on that?
Typically, I would say probably not next week, but the following week is typically a time frame I would look to kind of set that up. So as I look at my calendar, typically I would probably shoot for the second week of February, usually around probably the 7th of the week for opportunity to set up that meeting.
We'll be there.
So these are the kind of issues. These are the kind of issues personally, I think that we need to hash out a little bit in the planning board first, make sure we're comfortable with them before we send it to the design review committee saying, we're comfortable with this footprint, see what you can do with it. Is that?
Could we include Tricia, maybe prepare a quick list of the things that we would want the design review committee for the next meeting to discuss?
Yes. Do you want start doing that now, or do you want to wait to the next meeting to?
I think we can wait until the next meeting. I think what we can do is we can, all the members of the board can circulate through Peter our suggestions, and maybe we can distill like a short, quick list of the key things that we want them to review. And then at the next meeting, we can read it and review it.
Why don't we put together, Peter and I put together a little summary of what's been discussed so far. We'll send that list around, and then if you have any additions, people should add them on and send it back to Peter.
Perfect.
I also have a suggestion related to that, because I think that I've seen maybe a gap in our understanding, that I would like to see a memo out of the technical review, because I think there's a lot of stuff that happens to get ironed out, but we don't actually get specific feedback about that, or not often, or not in a coherent one piece of paper kind of thing. So I think that would help with some of this.
So I think usually we get kind of separate things from fire, police, you would like to see that all summarized in one document? I don't know, is that possible when it comes from different departments?
Well, like if you take a recent one that we did today, we got a couple things from the fire department about bollards. I asked to get another one to cover because one of the consultants said you should get this in writing. I never did see anything from the police if that's the case. So there's got to be a way to simplify that and make it that if there was agreements or discussions about stuff that we would have some information about that.
I'm happy to try to write up a memo or to tell you what as a bullet point that are this is the topics of discussion, and I can try to do that. But,
And that
Yeah,
would
I
be-
think that would be very helpful.
And that would be copied to the chief of police and the fire chief, so that they know that everything was accurately represented.
I would circulate it to them prior to sending out to the
Okay.
planning board.
Okay, sounds good.
Trisha, can I get a clarification? Because I'm hearing kind of different things we're doing
Yep.
next time. I heard Marcelo say, let's come prepared with things we want design review to actually do. And I hear that and I can start thinking about it. But I'm also hearing that we want the applicant to tell us more about the environmental stuff, about affordability. I'm thinking sustainability. We haven't talked about that yet in a lot of detail. We want reports from town entities like fire and police. We want a memo from Peter. So there seems to be at least 5 things we want from the applicant, and we are to prepare a list for design review. It's a lot. So I kind of want to be realistic. What are we actually trying to accomplish next time? Because we're going to have less than an hour usually in a big meeting. Are we going to ask the applicant for these 5 things: affordability, environment, memo from Peter, sustainability, town entities? Or are we going to focus on design review? I'm just confused.
I think in the next 2 weeks, Peter and the applicant are going to be working hard on all the things that we've brought up already. And Peter and I may summarize a list and send it around that these are the things we talked about regarding this project. That they will be working on the side, getting more information about environmental, about parking, about all of the things we're talking about, kind of the not pretty things, right? Meanwhile, we're also going to be asking, I'll send a list around that these are the things we think design review committee should address in this project. And that would be helpful for us. Obviously, they will have their own things as well, but it would be helpful for us. I will circulate that around for people to add to. And I think just at the next meeting, we're just confirming, yep, it's a good list. Is there anything else on it we want them to do? It's a good list. Send it to design review committee. We're sending this project to design review officially. Does that make sense?
I think
But
that's fine. I think it's
Okay.
just good to give us all guidance because it sounded like a very big laundry list of expectations for one meeting, which I know is not realistic. So
Yeah, I think just a lot of things are happening off meeting,
that's fine. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally. I made that list as well and I sent it to Peter and Tricia to help us get organized.
Okay,
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, so then on that note, we will be looking to continue this until when, Peter?
Well, our next planning board meeting, is going to be February 9th, which is the first meeting in February. We can kind of work to put together a list for the design reviews committee. I think I'm going to work early next week to schedule a tech review meeting. Hopefully that will happen the week of the 9th. So I will probably say that a memorandum of discussion items probably will not be ready for the 9th. But I think we can at least kind of meet and send the applicant on their way to the design review committee.
Okay, so that we will be talking about some of these issues, environmental, parking, everything we can talk about.
Correct.
And, okay. And finalize things for the design review, and then we'll send it to design review after our next meeting.
I think that's a good step.
Okay.
So with the applicant's consent, I think we continue this, Mr. Morris and Mr. Bohr, to February 9th. Does that date work for you two gentlemen?
I might have a conflict. I might have to, I have to make presentation before the Urban Affairs Committee, of the Marlborough City Council on the 9th.
We can continue it to the 23rd, which would be the second meeting. And obviously there's a lot of work that we can get done between now and then. As so is a tech review meeting and obviously sharing plans and formulating formulating maybe, the planning board and I, and, working with the chair, we can start to formulate a list of the design review committee topics. Does the 23rd work?
Right now it does.
Okay, so let's
I
put it
think-
in.
I just want to end off on a positive note. Can you repeat what I had said at the first hearing about sustainability? All of the parking spaces in the garage are going to be EV ready, and the building is to be fossil free. So we expect to be out ahead of the game on those issues, as well as the inclusionary housing. So I don't know that there has to be a lot of discussion. That we certainly
Maybe
don't need to be
simple.
prodded into doing that, and it's emblematic of our developments.
Great. Well, then hopefully the process will go smoothly. So.
Okay, so
Right.
Thank you
we're-
for your time.
we're
we'll be in
continuing to
touch
the
and we'll move
23rd.
to the 23rd.
All right. So anyone want to make that motion?
I make a
make a
motion that we continue the public hearing for 9 to 49 Homework to February 23rd.
And a
Second,
second?
I'll second it.
And roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
McLean, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So that is continued until February 23rd. Thank you to the applicant. Do we want
Thank
a few minutes break here before continuing? We have 10 to 60 Main Street and I think a few shorter items. At
Are we
least I
doing
hope.
34 High Street Stonewall first?
We can, if we,
Oh, no,
You
I'm
want to
just
do that?
curious.
would you like
What
to?
order? No, I just noticed it's on the agenda, so I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
sure.
no, I'm just
what order.
noticing the time.
Yeah,
so-
gotcha.
Should we do the Stonewall first, take a little
Yeah.
breather
Yep.
and then take a break and then go back to 10 to 60 Main?
Yes.
All right. All right. Is it Labrie? Labrie?
Yeah,
that correct?
Labrie.
All right, Mr. Labrie, your 2 thumbs up got you, got you a couple minutes.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Go ahead,
So
Peter.
when we last saw this, we had this is the continued public hearing from January 12th, Scenic Road 34 High Street, Stonewall opening. When we had last seen this project, we had kind of looked at it, that it was we kind of tried to make decisions in 2 parts. One, there was general agreement among the planning board, anyone can always correct me if I'm wrong, general agreement along the planning board that it was fine to open up the stone wall for this driveway. People respected the applicant's view of the wall and of wanting to maintain the look along that road, and we appreciated that. The part 2 that we were uncertain of is, okay, now we got this pile of rocks and what do we want to do with them? That was if you come down to layman's terms, that's what it is. So where are we now with the pile of rocks?
Correct. So I did another. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
I'm gonna jump in. I'm sorry, Matt.
Yep.
So I just want to make a note real quick prior to, Matt jumping into it, is that I did receive a question from from a planning board member concerning asking for town council to weigh in, and town council did weigh in. I was able to share that with Kate. However, I did not get a chance to send that out to the entire planning board. So if there is a reference and or a need to pull up that email, I'm happy to share my screen.
I think we definitely should do that.
Okay.
We all have the information.
Yep, I just want to do that first. I'm sorry. It came in late, early today or at some point.
Maybe
today.
forward it to us, Peter, in addition to being shown so that we can review it as well,
Yeah, I can do that. I can do
now that we're discussing it.
Yeah, I just gotta, it's just gonna take me a second. Excuse me. Not to slow down the process.
And
And I
I
also
assume it
wanted-
addresses Kate's question from the last hearing relative to the bylaw.
Correct, it does. So I'm gonna share my screen. Everyone sees it tonight, as I probably me. Just to make note, I can This is the original email from Kate. I will spare everybody from reading it out loud.
Yep.
I just emailed town council in summary. This is a map that Mr. Labrie will be able to discuss. That Mr. Labrie and I had a conversation about yesterday. And then this is most importantly, town council's response to Kate's email.
Can you just scroll back up when you have, assuming everyone has read the rest of it? I just
Yeah,
need to I just need to reread that first paragraph. I have to say, I have more questions than answers from that first paragraph. Just to be honest with you, it's not the most helpful. What I take out of it is we have authority over this, which I think we knew.
And you are the lawyer, Anna.
I hate to say it, I'm not getting much clarity from that.
But is that the way you understand it? The way she, I mean, maybe you relate more to this type
I'm not sure it answers Kate's question, is what I'm saying.
It sounds to me, is it right? It sounds to me that she's saying that we have the authority to decide on the wall. Is that right?
Yes, which I think we knew.
The bottom part kind of clears up my question.
Oh, okay.
Ask them to reconstruct somewhere. I wanted to make sure what's in our rights, not just to let them remove it, because our bylaw didn't.
Oh, okay. So you're saying
it's
that
not entirely clear, but the bottom part does say that.
In other words, you're saying this is telling us exactly what it's saying, which is like we have authority to move this stuff around. Okay, then it's helpful. I just thought, I remember there was this whole debate between Kate and me as to what meant like the distances, and I was super confused.
No, the planning board, I mean, again, we didn't vote. We, for safety reasons, acknowledged that we would let them.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Then in that case,
it is clear in our bylaw, but I think relented on that over safety.
Got it. So you were just confirming with town council that we have authority to move rocks around, basically. And that is
not for us to move them, to ask the applicant to move them.
Gotcha. I understand now. I'm sorry. I misunderstood the purpose of the request to town council. In that case, it is helpful because it reiterates our authority. I understand now. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I apologize for not sending it out when I received it. And I just want to make a note, at the last meeting, we talked about a sectional wall at the Cirrus of the abutting property. So that Cirrus was permitted with a 20-foot wide emergency access that goes up that way. And so there's probably no possibility for us to rebuild that wall that would block off that emergency access.
There's not, you're saying?
It's an emergency access easement that was requested at the time of the Cirrus derived for the Cirrus development by the fire department.
Okay.
Okay.
So do we know what happened to those rocks that were moved?
I do not. I couldn't track down.
But so on the last meeting, Peter, based on that note, we were saying that maybe we could save some of the rocks when they move it and adjust it to put it there or somewhere else. Definitely is not there because the fire department needs that access. So basically now we are at the point that we have to define what to do with them, or
Well, I
Well,
think that leads to the conversation, Matt.
Okay.
yeah.
I don't want to say dying to have because we're talking about old stone walls, but he's dying, he's chomping at the bit. So I'm gonna let Matt jump in and take it from here.
Thanks, Peter.
You got it.
So we did another site visit, and I think that we've come up with a great solution to solve every single problem and put everything in a 5-pound bag here. And I'm gonna share my screen.
Another rock joke. I like it.
So can you guys see that?
Not, yes, yeah.
Okay. So this is I'm sorry, I'm very terrible with Zoom. So where you can see my cursor.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're looking to create that separation of the stone wall is up here where my cursor is, and back here you can actually see this black pickup truck. That's the entrance. That's the existing driveway for Meredith and Daniel's house, and that's Meredith and Daniel's house over there. And as you come down the street, there's actually this break in the stone wall. This where you can see my tape measure is,
Mhm.
and this stone wall naturally wants to continue down this location. But what we have, if you follow my cursor, we have this inbound stone wall that runs up to the back end of the property, and this comes down. And right here is this telephone pole, and this is that access easement that Peter was talking about. And what we're proposing is taking the 25 feet of stone wall up here for that entranceway and adding it and continue it down and actually connect these two stone walls together in that natural point. And I'm going to flip over to actually, and you can see right here where that stone wall is missing right here along High Street. And where this stone wall comes down, we can create that point and bring it back to life, which I'm sure it was there 200 years ago, but now it's missing. So if we can relocate the wall that's up the road where we want to put our access and recreate that natural stone wall, it to me would be a great solution to one, gaining that access, but also adding to the stone wall that's naturally missing, rather than driving them across town, but actually keeping them local to the site, if that makes sense. And let me
Just gonna continue a chain, like.
Yeah.
continue along.
so
Seems
there you
perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, so you can see where that's without my tape measure, but it would come down and make this point right here. And that's, to me, this is a great solution to a problem, a problem that's existing and a need that we're looking for.
It's like a very natural way to resolve it.
Yeah,
Peter,
Are
is
you
there
guys,
any,
are you guys able to do that at your own expense?
we are.
Peter, is there any
Again-
other project, any other property ownership related issues with that? Or do we have, is this a scenic road? It's owned by Ashland and the stones can be moved there. Oh, yeah, you're unmuted.
Sorry. It's a scenic road. The property mostly, is on the owner's property. It fills a gap, right? A missing link in the stone wall. And I think it's in my eyes, I think it's a perfect solution to this situation. Is that, what the town gets is we get the continuation of the stone wall. We get investment in the stone wall that otherwise would just remain in the existing condition.
Any other comments from the planning board?
I have a question. So if I recall, it was 18 feet and we were sort of pushing the limits of what the bylaw says. And I agreed for that for safety, but then you mentioned 25.
Well,
said you actually stone, so it's 25 to complete it, and you're just going to use other stones that you had to complete that?
Yeah, so actually, I'm gonna
25, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get to that sketch. Because the opening's 25, but if it depends on where you're measuring. So if you're measuring to where remember we had that curve into if you're measuring at the tangent point of the upper part of that curve where it starts, then it would be 25. But it's really, so I kind of overestimated at 25 feet. But if you look at my tape measure, right here says 25 feet. We actually have to do more than 25 feet to make this corner work, because I still have probably like 4 feet behind me. So if we're removing 25 feet, we're actually going to rework all these stones and really make it probably closer to 29 feet. Just to make, because it would look awful if we just do 25 and they don't connect. To me, we're willing to do that extra work just to make it to work.
I assume there's also a lot of stones. You can see them in this image. I assume that were once part of the wall that were there that are now completely out of place.
Yeah.
And that can be used to actually create a wall again.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, what exists there no longer resembles a wall that much. Hopefully at the end we end up with something that actually feels a little bit more like a wall.
Right.
Can we go back to that drawing? Because I mean, the bylaw is very particular about the amount to be removed, and 25 feet is vastly exceeding that, I think.
I gotta look to my. Can you see that?
No.
No,
That's
we're
a
still
picture.
seeing the.
You gotta stop screen share, then reshare.
Sorry. Does it come? Can you see it? Okay. So the 25 feet was to this tangent point here, and the 18 feet would be here. So in order to make that curve would be that additional 7 feet. But
Yeah, so I don't think we agreed to that. And I know we didn't vote yet, so we can discuss it, but it was very much like the 18 was seeming reasonable to exceed the 14 that you would be allowed on over safety.
So what we can do is we can do 18 feet, but then to just do 18 feet down here would be very short of making that really look connected.
I mean, there's some loose rock over there, like Tricia said, that can be used to rebuild the wall. I mean, I definitely want to stick to the 18 feet and not
But I
increase
would
it.
suggest Kate and Anna, just as a thought, if we have the authority over the wall, just, this is me asking, don't we have the authority to make adjustments? I think the letter of how many feet is one kind of overarching way to approach all the conditions, but every condition has some nuances that I think needs to be addressed to really end up with something that looks right. I think that the curved approach on this corner to the right is going to feel right. It's going to be safer for the car to turn in if it's coming from the right side, and completing the wall on the other side is kind of the other side, the other handle of the problem. I think they both should be assumed as a whole and not just gets focused on 18 or 18 and a half feet. I think if you see this, the scale of these rocks, your eye is not going to be able to tell if it's 18 or 20. And I think it's more important that the whole site feels like it's complete.
I mean, 18 and 20 is not a big difference. 18 and 25 is something else. So I think we just need to kind of
I can show you a picture of, I'll go back to my pictures.
I mean, can we accomplish what we want with 20 rather than 25? There may not be perfect placement.
So
Right now, there's, yeah.
So so right here, this is that emergency access easement. So this is where that stone wall, this is where we want to stop it to. And you can see that the distance from here all the way down the street, there's no stone walls. I'm just, if you want to go by bylaws and be accurate by bylaws, and you agree to 18 feet, then I should only have to put back 18 feet. But I'm just, for safety reasons and making that corner, and I thought the bylaw did say safety regulations, then I didn't think 25 feet with that flare was that bad. But if you want 18 feet, we can go 18 feet.
But you can get a flare with 18 feet and that 25, and
Right, it'll be a tighter corner, but again, we can do it. But if we were to continue those rocks again with that picture,
Matt, but just looking at
18 feet would be probably like back up here.
But okay, so let's say that we stick to that. So if we're missing just a few feet, wouldn't it be kind of feasible to just make a compromise and say adjust the driveway to be close to 18 feet, 18, 20, I would say that's fine. You still have a bunch of rocks over there in the back that are falling. Could you just grab some rocks from completed anyways?
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, let's try to stick to, I'm okay with between 18 and 20 feet. I'm okay with that. I think once we go to 25, we're pushing this a little bit, and it seems like the rocks there are superbly loose. We've taken liberty as a town already and magically removed things that we don't even know where they are. So I think we can move some stuff around and be okay with that.
Okay.
And let's take a few of those rocks and connect it together and stick to between 18 and 20 feet and take what you need from those loose ones that have been moving around anyway.
Is that acceptable? We'll give a maximum of 20 feet opening in the wall, and then using those stones to make to fill in that extra area as best as you can.
Yeah, we can make it work. Yeah.
Because I agree that there is a big difference than what we were discussing last week, and suddenly the
Yeah,
numbers.
I want to honor our prior agreement.
Yeah,
The whole
yeah.
idea of
Yeah.
filling a wall was not meant to expand us from 18 to 25 feet.
It was more of a give and take where I was just like, oh, that my tape.
No, I get it.
My
And you guys
tape
have,
measure went 25 feet, and if
Yeah.
that curve went to 25 feet, it's
No,
more of like
totally.
you guys get 25, we get 25, kind of a thing.
no,
We can make
totally.
we can make 20 work.
And you guys
Right.
are also doing the work of moving the stuff, which is no joke. So, which we appreciate. So, like I said, I'm personally okay with 20.
Okay.
Me
Can I make a
personally, I don't know how the
motion?
rest of the board feels about that.
Will I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the scenic road application for removal of no more than 20 feet at 34 High Street to be replaced near the property on 34 High Street. Preference to the board to finish to attach the other wall.
And we're giving authority to the applicant to move rocks from that back wall to fill in the rest of the 25 feet.
I think the
Part of the
back wall is
motion.
probably his property.
That's on our property.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I'll-
he can do what he wants, yeah.
So I'll second the motion.
All right, and a roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Arjona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Night.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So that passes. Peter, I assume you need to write up something or other for us to.
Yeah, I have a
officially-
little memo I'll write up and I'll circulate that around.
Can make sure there's a diagram or
Yep.
it needs to refer to some kind
Yep,
of drawing.
everything will be attached.
yeah, I'll redraw it for you, Peter. If you
Yeah, and then I'll just put exhibit A and I'll take it from that point.
All right, great.
Thanks for fitting me in before your break.
You're welcome. You owe us.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
All right. So how long of a break do you want? You want 5 minutes? You want 3 minutes?
I think
We're good.
5 would be nice to just breathe.
All right, 5
reset.
minutes. My clock says 10:12. Let's be back on at 10:17.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thanks.
you then.